But that was self-inflicted by consuming port on New Year's Eve.
Consuming porn. That's not this kind of show.
Port! Port! Ta, 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 ta.
Don't cut at us just because we don't.
Ta, ta.
Learn to speak
the
English,
off-topic has
Mr.
started
Old
already.
Geek. I mean, yeah. Oh, someone at my door. I'll be right back.
All right. Saxius, you've been in Denmark.
Yeah, I've been in Denmark. I've been with family. I've been celebrating.
You've been
these
LARPing,
events.
haven't you? You've been LARPing with large axes.
I don't think I've actually sent the pictures, but yes, my dad does have 2 Viking axes in his house, so I've not been making that up. Yes, no, there's been no games. There's been no games. It's all on hold till this weekend, and then we will. Sorry, I tell a lie. I've had one game. I convinced my real life group, to have a one-shot of Call of Cthulhu to see if they would like it. And they investigated the disappearance of Sarah Wallstead, and she was an art student. They went further in, and it was a play on the model of Pigman Upton by H.P. Lovecraft, where the players more or less became so engrossed into this world of art that they didn't know, but they passed over the veil and then became encapsulated inside a painting made by the very person that they were looking for. So that was how that entire thing ended. They all died by being sucked into a painting.
Very good.
So they have to just. One player actually said, "Oh, this is a very neat game. Maybe we should do that as an in between when we're done with Red Hand of Doom and the next campaign. That sounds like a nice, breaking of what we know of the stress that you normally give us, Oscar." It's like, excuse me, hey, this is not as stressful. Well, I better get out the real games then.
Joker, I know which games you've been playing. They've been ones.
I kind of want to be in the. I kind of want to be in the painting.
But no, Joker, you've played in a couple of games of last week.
Only a couple.
I've been running. Yeah, games that I've been running. You had your first taste of
and
Call
some
of
other
Cthulhu last
DMs in
night.
here.
So, Elfbait, I know you've been working and stuff. Have you had any time for any gaming?
Actually, I haven't been working for the last week. I had the whole Christmas thing up until tomorrow off, but I haven't had much gaming. My game's on hold till after the holidays, and then I've had to bow out of Saxius's game for a bit until I get my alternating Sundays back in order. And then, of course, I was traveling to see my kids for the holiday, so I did get to play some video games with them. That was fun. Some adventure gaming in there. But I was hoping to run a game for them. That would be like, I told them this year, I'm like, one of these years for Christmas, my present can be, I want to run a game for the family, all the kids, my wife, who's also a gamer. Let's sit around Christmas Eve and let me run a game for you. I think that would just be awesome. Just do a Christmas Eve one shot. Sort of the modern gamer version of the Dickensian, ghost story, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's other. I've been doing some game design stuff. On my time off, I cracked out a first draft for a set of miniature rules. Finished painting my first miniature of the day of the new year today. A little Deep One priest dressed in Deep One gold. It's not going to come across very well. And I did post on my Discord over on the channel for the channel the first official announcement for games I'll be running over there.
Excellent.
And I've had one bite. So hopefully they'll trickle in.
It's Mondays, isn't it?
It is Mondays, but I figure somebody. No, I can't be the only one who has a weird work schedule, and that's kind of the, anybody who's free on Sundays is in your games.
Saturdays for me.
Oh, that's right, Saturdays for you.
Yeah. Mondays is my face-to-face gaming night.
Yeah.
Though they've been a bit erratic recently in terms of their availability.
Yeah,
but I couldn't commit to someone else's campaign based on being only able to play when my face-to-face group are not available. It's
my Mondays are wide open, and like I said, I can't be the only one who's got an odd day off, and I figured I'll make it available there. So.
Well, things I've done since we last, because it's been 2 weeks since we last met on a Wednesday night. Last Wednesday, I was not strong enough to stream. I'd been being poked and prodded in the hospital, but I got home in time to play in a very gentle, very pleasant one-ring game. I wasn't running it; I was merely a player, and I was able to just sort of sit back. And then we were finished by about stream starting time, about 9 o'clock. But then I pretty much went to bed after that. But that was quite pleasant. Very gentle, simple fetch and. If you ever played Lord of the Rings online, and you remember starting in the Shire, where you had to do the post or you had to fetch and carry pies and things like that, that's about as heroic as it got. But it felt authentic.
Pie is important. Don't diminish the necessity of the pie.
Yeah, it's a fetch quest worth having. So
yes. Then we played some MERP on Saturday night, and things are now beginning to move apace. I think they've finally worked out which of the princes of Cardolan that they are going to side with, and have realised that he's possibly the one who's most likely to bring in stronger outside allies, which is a good thing. So let's see what happens from there. And last night, we had our first session of Horror on the Orient Express. My biggest ever session of Call of Cthulhu. I had 7 players turn up for that session for a game of Call of Cthulhu. It was fine. It was absolutely fine. Once people sort of relaxed into timing when to talk, and lots of people got their cameras on so we could see them, it made it easier to interact. And it was very, very role-play heavy. Very role-play heavy. And they went wonderfully off tangent and made me improvise quite a bit, which for quite a linear scenario can be quite difficult at times. That's one of the things I want to come into for what makes a good DM, what makes a good GM. But first things first, I'm just going to go round and ask people the single most important quality that a DM must have. There's one quality you have to pick for a DM. What must it be?
I like objectivity. You're muted, Bear.
Bear's muted. Yes.
Sorry, I like flexibility.
Flexibility.
yeah, I was going to say adaptability or flexibility myself. So
Communication.
Joker, you're a relative noob. So in the various games you've played, what sort of parts of
Well, generally, like I've said to you guys before, with my my first introduction into what's classed as what is D&D supposed to be now, and not what you guys do, which is even better and easier to understand, is the fact that you guys take time for newbies like me and Iman, and give us time to feel our way in.
So patience,
but know how to introduce the style of D&D to basically noobs, and not expect us to fly off to the knowledge that you guys already know, kind of thing, which is what I got hammered with initially.
Right. That's a fair point. That's something that we, as DMs, we need to take to heart, because Joker is new. He's had a bad experience trying to start up playing D&D 5th edition. Has come and joined us and has just dived in head first as much as he can, because you've played in my games, Gene's games, and Gingerbeard's games, haven't you, so far? I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. And
whoever's been running one, I have been.
yeah. I'm going to say, I mean, I agree here with Shadow and Son. I'm not sure if it's the single most important, but it links up with the adaptability that people have mentioned, and that is the ability to improvise at the drop of a hat. And I think that comes under the banner of adaptability. Yes, Ben?
So that's why I say flexibility, not adaptability.
Flexibility.
No. They're different things for me. Adaptability is basically changing and doing stuff on the fly, and it's a very, very important skill. But for me, flexibility is the ability to let your players sometimes guide the story and move it in directions you weren't thinking of, as opposed to being that stiff, iron-spined sort of, no, it's my game, it goes this way. No, you got to be flexible. Then be adaptable, because they're going to take you into weird places. Have patience, because my God, the other choice is pedantry. And then objectivity is to make sure you're not punishing players who do things that annoy you because they annoy you. But that's just you. You should let that go and be very objective with your players and let them do what they want, and have fun with that. Not saying there shouldn't be consequences for their actions, but don't punish players. So if you take everything we all sort of said here, it becomes the hallmarks of a great GM.
Yeah.
So there we go. We've answered the topic. That's the end of
Good
the
night,
topic.
folks.
Thank you.
From Canada.
Thanks for coming.
Right. So yes, you're saying about a difference between flexibility and adaptability. Let's go into that a little more, shall we, Bear? I mean, adaptability. I had them as pegged down as very similar concepts when it comes to DMing. It's the ability to adapt to what your players want to do and adjust on the fly, all in one. It's. Would you say they're very different?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I hate to be a politician, but could you re-ask the question, please?
It's basically so adaptability and flexibility in John's world are one and the same. So if you would mind exploring and going into deeper details of what makes a difference between the adaptability and flexibility, please.
Well rephrased.
Adaptability is probably better.
The
better word. Thank you, Saxis, by the way. Your English is masterful, sir. John,
yes, I was going to say,
with you, man. But anyway, for me, adaptability is improvisational skill. It's the ability to respond to the actions of the players, to respond to the choices the players make that may not be par for the course. Flexibility is the ability to go, all right, well, this is going in a direction I never thought it would go, but I'm going to let it go. I'm gonna allow. I'm not gonna try. I'm not gonna. So everyone uses the term railroad in the modern age. When we played in the 80s, we called it stonewalling, and we had one referee who we had this one player. Oh my God! Anytime the DM would do something remotely stonewalling, he'd just be like "Stonewaller" at the top of his lungs, right across the table at him to remind him of stop throwing blocks in our way, but let the story go the direction we're taking it. And then your improvisational skills or your adaptability will be your ability to get the story back on track as need be without making it look like you're shoving the players in a direction. So that's, I think, that, if that makes sense, that's the difference between the two in my mind.
Okay.
I'm sure Saxis could say it much better than me.
God, Saxis, you can probably say it better than all of us, even though
English but I chose communication for all of this. Communication to me is also, it's a two-way thing. You're both listening to what it is that the players are wanting to go for and what it is that, because using what we've just had here with John saying what he wanted to say, that didn't make sense to someone, but then being able to listen to what it is that they're saying and knowing what it is that they mean, being able to interpret that and then communicating it out clearly for someone else or for the wider group. To me, that's also a very important thing, because you are juggling with many different personalities, many different ways of interpreting information and data that's put in front of them. And you've got to be able to, as we said, encompass everything. So being able to adapt to how it is that they do it, be flexible for how you then provide the information onwards. Who is, some people are more oriented towards like, what can I see? What do I smell? More of the five senses. Others are more about, like once they get like the map built in their world, like they need to know where everything's moving. Others are a lot more about here in the present, so on and so on. But that's all about the communication side of it. And for that, like, again, you have to take in everything. The flexibility, you got to be adaptable for what's being said. You got to be ready, as we're all agreeing here. Like at the drop of a hat, you got to be able to sort of like improvise and make things up. Because the players are the ones who are directing where this is going, module or not. They are the ones who are saying where the story is going. That's all they can go on. Yeah, go on, Bear.
I mean, that makes you, at the end of the day, there is a certain amount of shepherding then that would also go into being a good GM, is that, by using those skills, you let the cats run as far as they need to go, and then you herd them back towards the adventure if you can, without stonewalling or being inflexible or no quantum ogre. Like you can, in French, the term we use is bouge, which means move. Bouge un peu, move a little bit, be a little, flexible, adaptable, nimble.
I was gonna say, to be fair, to do what you guys do is like a circus act in itself. It's like all the juggling, there's lots of DM skills that you need to be a good DM that you all got to juggle at once, and it's like not everybody can do that, but it's an art if you can, and all praise to you, and I love you all.
Oh,
thank you very much.
You've only played with 3 of us so far, and two aren't here. So.
Even if I don't get much chance to being heard sometimes.
I also do want to quickly like throw in what Imam is saying with adaptability, meaning that you adapt to the situation that's presented to you on the fly, and the flexibility means that you're willing to let the situation evolve in its own natural pace. That's from Imam.
Well, you also need literal flexibility when the dice fall on the floor and you have to reach down. And
yes, you got to stretch before the game. The last thing you want to do is tear a rotator
more dice. More dice.
Not when you have cats, man. Do you have cats, Sax?
Yeah, if you're going to reach across the table and strangle a player, you need to be flexible. But
what's really interesting is if you throw the dice at them, there's less hate crime potential. So
that is true.
I was rolling.
It slipped.
Exactly.
Now, this is a comment I saw Nerdy Ogre make a few minutes back, but I believe, Elfbait, you've already answered this one in chat.
Yeah, I would say that.
Intent. I agree.
Yep. Yes. It's the difference between punishing your players and giving your players consequences. It's the intent. Every actions within a world should have consequences, but a consequence isn't necessarily something good or something bad. It is just
a response.
A response.
Yeah,
whereas punishing assumes bad.
Yeah, we fall into Sean's wheelhouse there. So.
I'd like to give an example, if I may, from my game last night. Is that okay? Is anybody okay with that?
No, go for it.
Yeah.
So the entire point of the session was that they had to go through counseling with a counselor from Starfleet because their ship's gone through a couple of things and they don't have a counselor on crew right now. So Starfleet was like, let's do a little mental health check on the group. Sean's character, and particularly GM Cody's character, in very different ways, were clearly hostile to the counselor and were not interested in being in the room. Cody chose deflection as his character's choice, where he tried to deflect everything and then use little subtle diminishing tactics against the counselor, who, for NPC purposes, was played by Annie Lennox from the 80s. So that was quite nice. And Sean, on the other hand, chose direct stonewall aggression as his choice, and it was hilarious. Now,
I am an honest man and a soldier.
Exactly. And a bad GM would have gotten frustrated by this and maybe found a way to punish them or have the character pull rank on them or whatever the case may be, or recommend to the captain this person needs discipline or something like that. Where instead I thought this is great because now we're learning about these characters and how they feel about their inner selves, how they feel about sharing
Situations,
information, how they feel about being forced into a situation due to regulations by this. And as a result, it allowed for more role playing to develop and everybody, not only the players, but the rest of us to get a better sense of who their characters were, as well as the comments we were getting in the live stream. People were really into it. So intent is clear. They were in character choosing to be uncooperative with the situation. A bad GM would have tried to force them or gotten upset or done something rude or even in game used the power of the GM fiat to punish them for it. Whereas a good GM, and I'm not saying I'm a good GM, I'm just saying I understood the situation, continues it and finds a way to keep it going and see if we can have a breakthrough or see if we can find a way for the characters to get around it. And ultimately it wound up working well for the doctor, GM Cody's character, who invited the counselor out to a dinner date and, wound up having a dinner date with this person later. Whereas this guy went and, punched Klingons or something. I can't remember exactly what the
Guy's got to do what a guy's got to do.
Exactly. But it was good role playing, right? And it facilitated that.
That brings up one little topic I was going to come to a little bit later on the stream, but we might as well cover it now.
Fighting or not fighting?
What was that?
Fighting or not fighting?
Fighting or not fighting? Well, no, it's not that. No. It's recognizing moments during play that you can develop and you can bounce off yourself. So if you've got, for example, you've got two players using contrasting methods, isn't it an opportunity for you to get involved in the role play with your NPCs as well, reacting to their methods? It's spotting these opportunities and treating them as opportunities rather than something to fight against.
It's évident.
Yeah,
I mean, it's taken for granted in my reffing style.
Yeah,
but that's a skill that has to be learned as well. It's like
fair.
Brand new DMs aren't going to see that, and you talk about a DM being married to their ideas. A lot of it can be, they'll take it personally. A DM has put in the work and they've set this thing up. How dare you not go along their plan? And then that's where the punishment will come from.
Yep.
No.
And I do apologize to anyone in my Call of Cthulhu game on a Tuesday night. If you ever feel like I am railroading you, I just happen to be running Horror on the Orient Express.
You're on a literal train.
And it is,
But we're
if
not
there's one criticism of that campaign, is that it is a little linear at times.
Imagine that.
But I am going to try and be as flexible as I possibly can and as adaptable as I possibly can. To try.
So I've got a question for Joke, if that's all right. So on the topic of the punishing and the consequences for you as a player, how would you perceive a DM doing one or the other? Like how would you as a player see, oh, the DM is now punishing me, or that is he's punishing another player, or how would you turn around and go like, oh, this is clearly the consequences? Because we as DMs often sit with the helicopter view of we know what it is that we're doing, but I think the player's perspective is also very valid because they're the ones who are on the other side of the screen.
But yeah, this also comes into the idea of what I said about, like the longer I play and get used to it, the more I understand, like you say, the consequences. But like an introduction, it's like some DMs, like if somebody rolls a crit one, you get close to death, but like a sword just narrowly misses you, but nearly took your foot off or something. Just like a slow you into knowing what critical ones can be, which are bad, compared to natural 20s, which are outstanding. But yeah, the more you get, it's how you learn them, the consequences, maybe at a comical level, like near misses, but nearly took you out. And then as the player gets used to it, you can actually really start having punishments that actually hurt.
I say so. It's a good idea to be a little more gentle with beginners, but to lean them into the mechanics a little
Well,
bit.
it's still a kind of feel. As a DM, I'm guessing you've got to just feel how far you can take the learning experience for newbies and sense how far you can, how far you can take them, because obviously some need more nurturing than others.
I don't think you necessarily have to nurture players when it comes to consequences, because most of the consequences will happen, like actual consequences will happen organically. Halakar mentioned the dwarven thief charging into battle. The dice are going to lay that out. Those are the consequences, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's basically, you know, as DMs, you make up what happens if you get a critical one. You describe
there are games.
That critical
there are games that have got that baked into mechanics, but a lot of games, most versions of D&D have no consequences for rolling a critical one.
I'd say
just a miss. Yeah,
I mean, even if you're letting it fall to the dice, so I think that with new players, there's still a bit of finessing there, because until somebody gets familiar enough with the risk reward, the probabilities, and all of that in a system. They can't make an informed enough decision, even with objective die rolls in play and all of that. So, like, you know, it takes a little bit of getting to know the game before you know what you can do. How far you can push it.
Still, at the end of the day, how you nurture and how you nurture new people into understanding the goings on of consequences, and that in D&D.
Like you say, I mean, for example, a new player coming to OSE, for example, might not realize that his first level thief with AC 7 and 3 hit points really should not go toe to toe with the hobgoblin.
You know, people coming from D&D to Call of Cthulhu, for example, you know, they're like, you cannot run up and beat the deep one in the face with your hammer. It's just not going to fly. You know, Cthulhu is not there for you to kill.
You can try. I mean, go ahead and give it a go, but
meanwhile, fifth players are rolling up the sleeves, going, "Yeah, hold my beer."
Yeah,
that's the style of 5e. But
I prefer yelling at the players aggressively across the table and calling them stupid while pointing directly at them. I find that really gets the best results out of the players. Oh wait, no, sorry, that's dates.
You've also got this consistent open chair where that player sits.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always space.
You have to do it in George Takei style. You look at him, go, "You are stupid."
Oh my!
Oh my!
Just because it has hit points doesn't mean you can kill it. Well, it doesn't mean you should.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Oh, Sax! I hate you.
You might say his quips are predatory.
Oh, I don't want to live in Ontario anymore.
I think with new players, there's a fair bit more room with a lot more. Are you sure? Questions.
You want to do this, yeah.
And also, sometimes just reminding them how their stuff works. Like, you can try to fireball, but just remember the fireball will blow up the room.
It's little reminders. Yes, little reminders.
But even so, those are consequences, not punishments, right? Like,
yes.
The results of the player's actions, biting them, is not you punishing them.
No, but I feel like it could fall into the realm of punishment if they're new enough to still not get it, I guess is my point. You're not doing any good to the player in my brain by smacking them down with the stupidity of throwing a fireball into a 10x10 room where the party is standing there.
Well,
it's like their first time. When's their first time casting the spell?
But even so, the cause and effect is there, plain to see for the players, as opposed to, okay, they did something that you didn't like, so oh look, the goblins have now doubled their numbers and they're swarming you, right?
Oh no, I mean, I don't disagree with you there. Yeah, I don't disagree.
My only comeback to your argument there, Eli, is that a fireball is a 3rd level spell, which is achieved by a magic user at 5th level or wizard at 5th level. If a player has played long enough to get to 5th level, they should be aware of area of effect at range.
That's not a guarantee.
It's not a
They
guarantee.
should
I mean,
be.
That is not a guarantee. And you
They should be.
Oh, my nerd detector just went off. I'm so sorry.
I was going to say, just how expert are you every time you learn a new thing?
I'm not. I'm not. But
I do also, from the points that we've had here, I do also want to throw in. I think it's a good point that Omen Owl basically brings in is that warning the players of the consequences of that the characters might take. Because again, I think it's worth pointing out that in the world that the players are playing in, those characters would have innate knowledge of certain things and certain factions and insights which the players might not immediately know. So there's nothing wrong by going, oh, by the way, Joker, you are playing the second-born noble son of this house from this kingdom. You would know that if you went to this area, and even though you're protected by all the laws, you still doing bad things to the citizens. That will have consequences because those people belong to another. Yeah, they would tarnish your name, and they belong to another nobleman, so they won't like that. Conflicts, consequences. Go on, Bear.
Right, but then there's the punishing. Right, I was playing in a D&D game back in college, and one of the players was playing dwarf, and my fighter spoke dwarven, and we were in front of the prince, who was, the wicked, spoiled prince, the Joffrey, prototype, pontificating away. And the dwarf player's character looked at my character in dwarf and said, "How much longer must we suffer this brat?" And then the GM suddenly decided that the man-at-arms clearly spoke dwarven and reported the thing. And we're like, show us the character sheet, man. Show us the NPC sheet where it says in his languages that he speaks Dwarven, because I think we were all like, we think this is complete bullshit that he suddenly speaks Dwarvish, like, come on.
Yeah, it's possible, but suspicious. Yeah,
but suspicious, and of course he refused. I will never show you my NPCs. And we were like, well, we're fucking done playing for today, then, because it was just like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's
when the coincidence is that extreme, I love showing players like, no, look, I didn't plan that.
No, exactly. If I have an adventure where there's going to be waves of goblins, using Sean's thing, if the goblins suddenly doubled their numbers, it's written down. And when they go, "It's not fair," and I go, "Well, life's not fair, but notice there are 4 waves of goblins on this sheet."
Or even if it's not written down, it makes sense. Like, you're in a dungeon, that room 7 has 14 goblins and it borders room 4, and there's a huge ass fight in room 4. So what's room 7 just going to sit there on their goblin-y little thumbs and ignore the battle going on?
Apparently.
All intelligence doesn't range that far out.
I'm in room 8. That's my job. Stay in room 8. I'm going room 7.
Oh, so you have dungeon keeper goblins.
That sounds like some places I've worked at in the cubicles of like, no, that's cubicle 7 problem. That we are cubicle 8. We don't get involved in cubicle 7.
First rule of cubicle hell: if it doesn't happen in your cubicle, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
So never look up and over the top of your cubicle when something's going on.
On the topic of explaining the idea of actions having consequences, and framing the potential lethality of a game world or a game system, what sort of techniques do you tend to use with newer players in order to bring them up to speed with the idea? The idea. I mean, for example, if you've got somebody who's starting a new game of OSE, and they're completely brand new, do you just let them go charging in straight away and lose 3 or 4 characters before they realize how hard the game is? Or do you just drop? Do you drop little hints? Do you try and put little hints in there?
What? Little hints. You got to browbeat players, especially the new ones, because they don't know the content or the context of what you're dealing with.
Let me give one example. Running a MERP game for a face-to-face table. They've probably played 3 or 4 sessions of MERP. They're getting the hang of it. And they've just entered this quite a rough town on the edge of Mirkwood. And I wanted to sort of set a bit of the scene for a potential enemy in 3 or 4 sort of potential scenarios' time. Once I'd given them a chance to build up a bit, but I didn't really want them to confront him now. But I wanted him to be there as someone for them to aspire to take down. So they went to the pub and they got arguing with this big barbarian type who promptly showed himself to be stronger than the strongest character in the party. Then a little bit later on, this drunken guy comes in, who is the leader of the enemy, the enemy band, and kicks the shit out of the barbarian, who has just proven that he's tougher than the party members. The next day, something kicks off in town, and the general idea is that the party will help somebody and get out. But no, they tried to go right up to the bandit leader, the one who just the night before had proved just how hard he was by beating somebody who was harder than them, and square up to him immediately. Now, I had tried to just sort of put little nuggets in there to give the idea of just how tough this guy is and what he was capable of doing. They hadn't grasped it. They hadn't grasped it.
Yes, but this is the player.
You did your due
mentality.
diligence then.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
Yeah.
you've done what sounds to me to be fair, but from my I'm going to use my real life group in this because a lot of them were newbies, and I told them up front what my style is, what I like to do, how much I like that. My style is very much of a certain taste, and I warned them they were going to be playing Ravenloft. So I gave them out of game warning. This is what I am going to be like. But I am going to be building this up because I'm going to have several sessions of you guys getting used to the game first and foremost. Then we're going to have the introduction into Ravenloft, and then we'll sort of build it up from there. But it wasn't until like the last quarter of the actual game where I had removed all kitty gloves and I was going full ham at them because at that point they had acclimatized to how I run. I personally, I would not expect brand new players to come down to my table and within 1 or 2 sessions pick up on the subtle hints that I will be doing. I will be like you did, John. You know, it was very clear what was going on here. But my expectations is actually this is going to go over their heads. This guy's a tough one. We can take him on. If he's 1, we're 5. Again, think in real life. 5 guys versus 1. 5 guys are going to have a really good chance.
He wasn't 1 though. The next day, he had a few men with him.
John,
but they went straight for him.
My point stands of what I'm trying to explain here.
Yeah.
Go on, Bear.
So you all know I was a bouncer. You all know that I fought for a living. 5-on-1, if the 5 are useless versus 1 that is very competent, it's not going to go the way the 5 think it's going to go.
No.
Because the 1 is going to put down those numbers to 3-on-1 real fast. And at that point, morale checks are going to be starting to fly around that table because suddenly they're not as tough as they were, and they just watched Steve and Gus get their asses handed to them in 3 seconds, and they're starting to run the math in their heads. Now there's going to be 1 that's going to be like, I'm in no matter what, and now we're down to 2-on-1. You understand? Like, I agree with John.
It's usually the most mouthy ones who go down first as well.
Yeah. Now, games do not absolutely reflect real life because lucky rolls, things like that. But actually that happens in life too. I've seen guys, pop their knee by having a bad back leg stance, or, someone pulls a bottle out of nowhere and clubs the better fighter across the head. I mean, there's tons of things that can go wrong in a fight. And games can represent that through the luck of the dice. But warning the players, you already showed them how badass this guy was. Maybe the lesson needs to be learned. Now, I wouldn't have him kill them if it's in a city. I'd have them knock them cold, leave them on the ground, so they learn their lesson and maybe come back from it. But if they charge the dragon at level 1, well, fuck them, they're dead. They're dead because they're idiots.
Well, there's a lot of
this. Go on, Sean.
So I was going to say a lot depends on the circumstance at the table too. Like if you've got players coming in from 5e and they're used to the invincibility, and now they're playing OSE, you need to have that conversation. About the rules and about the mechanics and how they play out differently. I think that's fair. And if they persist, then it's on them. And same with video game players. Video game players who come to a tabletop RPG for the first time still have a sort of a video game mentality. So they figure they can just rush in, and I've seen it happen where people's like
save and reload.
Yeah, I charged the 5 orcs.
Practically.
So yeah, it's like a little reminder. This isn't a video game. Things play out a little differently, and you're not gonna get the get the auto win. So I think having those warnings totally fair. But yeah,
what actually happened in that? The party's biggest fighter squared up with the big bad guy, gave him a load of that, and attacked him. The big bad guy retaliated and got playing Merp. Bear will know the brutality of criticals in Merp. First
Spine
round of
instantly shattered, body reduced to a gelatin pile on the floor. Get a spatula, I think was the one I remember the most brutal.
Yeah,
your lance hits an invisible turtle.
Yeah, I remember that one. We used to hate invisible turtles.
And the party's big tough fighter got killed in the first round of combat instantly because of the dice. After I'd given them the warning.
Yeah, Eli.
So one area that I do feel there's some room to I wouldn't call it warning, but provide additional information. This goes back to the flexibility and adaptability. Is I don't think that any level of narration is ever going to feed 100% of the type of sensory input that a person would have actually being there. So I really do feel it's a good thing as a GM to if players do something that maybe conflicts with something that either wasn't said before, or they're asking stuff at the last minute, or they're maybe alluding to that, saying like just a reminder, it's super hot in here, any kind of heavy exertion is going to cause exhaustion or whatever, just kind of that sort of stuff that often goes by the wayside, and people don't necessarily feel from a simple narration or a description of an area. The levels of darkness, the slipperiness of the ground, the loose shale under their feet as they're going up the mountainside. These sorts of things you might describe when they first start up, but it might be helpful to remind them, just so you have a fair footing when the fight comes, that, hey, you're fighting these goblins on this mountain pass. Just remember, the footing here is loose. Stuff like that. I don't feel like it's not the same as like warning, like if you pop that ogre in the face, he's going to bend you in half. It's just kind of a reminder of some stuff that may have been described 3 or 4, wilderness encounters ago when they first started.
Something else I did when running the Lost City. It was a bit of an "Are you sure?" moment. You want to run across this rope bridge. I'll just remind you that the pit beneath looks to be 80 to 100 feet in depth. You saw snakes at the bottom, and it didn't feel particularly safe when you walked across it the first time.
Yes, I'm Indiana Jones. I can do it.
Okay, make a roll. Good luck. You have disadvantage.
100-foot fall. I'm
Even
not
I
too
don't
concerned
have
about
to
the
do that.
snakes at that point.
Well, the snakes might break your fall.
Yes,
Yeah.
wish.
Well, if there's enough of them, perhaps.
Perhaps. And then the others will bite you relentlessly. So it's 2 saves.
Yeah.
The falling save and now the poison save.
My luck,
there
I'd
goes
fall.
your
My
balls.
back would be broken because the snakes cushion my fall just enough to survive, but I can't move as that large python eats me alive.
I just want to question Richard here. It's okay for a player to die. Okay. If the player's dead, then the player's not going to learn from the game experience. But if their character dies, then the player will learn from the experience.
If he dies, he dies.
I must break him.
I'm scared of Richard now.
That joke
There you
never
go.
seems to get old, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No.
No, it never does. It never does.
Sax is stealing all my best movie quotes tonight, man.
No, I'm sorry. I'll shut
I'm going to
up.
put him in a sleeper hold there pretty soon.
It's when John starts stealing the movie quotes, we know we have to worry.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't think I can carry on up the anything tonight. So please, John, don't quote movies.
I'm trying to think of a movie I can quote. I'll come back to you in about half an hour.
Friends,
Add 15
Roman.
minutes to that.
So okay,
There we go.
no, the Messiah is a very naughty boy. So can we agree then that there's a certain level of shepherding new players that you should do, but there's also a certain level of you made your bed, you sleep in it that we should be doing as well.
I think
Definitely.
that slides with the experience level of your players, though.
Mhm.
Oh no,
Yeah,
there
you've got
comes
to
a level
balance.
where it's like, screw you, you
Yeah.
make your choices.
I
you
will
get your
often reach a
results.
point in my campaign too. Like, for example, my 5e campaign that's pushing 3 years now. At a certain point, I'm like, all right, guys, we've been playing for 6 months. It's up to you now. Unless I see a place where there's a glaring problem that that needs updating. Like in a lot of cases, maybe I didn't describe something clearly, or it's very obvious that their character should know something different, and they're about to act on behaviors that their character really just shouldn't. I will at that point pull back. But that's we've been playing long enough. My DM style. I tend to be probably a little bit more easygoing than some folks, based on the comments, and but yeah, it's still though. I mean, there has to be a point where you do make the players responsible for their abilities. Like my players keep forgetting. It's a 5th edition game, and they keep forgetting everything their characters can do. And it's just like going through these battles. I'm like, that could have been over 5 rounds ago.
But ultimately, they're responsible to know their character.
I just want to
That
react
is
here
true.
I just want to react here to what Curtis says regarding my situation with the bandit beating up the barbarian guy. I was trying to sort of lay down a little bit regarding the hierarchy of the various factions within the town, and these were first level MERP characters. I had made it clear to the players that they are fragile. That it's very much I think it's very much quite a modern gaming mindset that first level characters are heroes. I don't picture first level characters as being heroes yet.
Yeah, it depends
There's
on
a
the game.
path. There's a pathway to go on to become a hero, but that pathway does not mean taking on people foolishly who are clearly a lot more competent than they are right now. It's to find a way of overcoming them, not a direct fight.
Yeah.
So even with a hero, one of my favorite westerns is a movie called Silverado, and there's a really great scene in it where the hero is showing off what a badass he is with his target practice, with all of his guns out shooting needles off of cacti and all this kind of thing, and then the bad guys show up and go, "You're out of ammo," and lay the boots to him. Okay, and then when the revenge comes, he's got to be smarter. He has to get people to help him. He's got to do all these other things. So even heroes can find themselves in situations where they need to learn the humility lesson. And in fact, that's part of the heroic journey, is to learn the humility of being a hero, is that you are not indestructible. You are not indefeatable. You are not indefatigable. You are... your humanity is what makes you the hero. Your vulnerabilities are what makes you the hero.
Yeah, I think also the thing here with Curtis's comment too is like, it's not that they can't confront the bandit. It's whether or not it was a good idea or not. And are there other ways to deal with them? So a bandit beats up the barbarian in the tavern. All right, that's what town guards are for. It's like, all right, we're gonna go. Some dude's beating people up in the tavern.
And that's where
I'm a first level dude. I'm a farmer with my dad's sword and a stool for a shield. Please go take care of this man for me.
I believe Sachs had a point he wanted to make.
Sorry, Sachs.
Well, I was just gonna be basically saying 0 to hero. Like that's a story way that it could be done, where you are not the hero of the story at the beginning, but you build yourself up towards it.
To become
but that is how you can go about it. Alternatively, there are, again, I've seen games online where it straight up says, you start out level 3 in 5th edition D&D. because that's beginning of 0 level. They don't want to do that. Straight into hero. Cool.
Oh, yeah. And
Go
we-
straight in for that, and then you know what the setting is. I think I would argue like this is also down to the communication of what the style of the game that you're going to be experiencing, and then we would be applying everything else. We discussed the flexibility, shepherding, adaptability, being objective about it. Because again, using the example, everything was put up front that we all agree about.
Mm.
Bandit was a tough person. It was objectively done. It was the stats was there to support that. The roles were there. Everything was there. So yeah, go on, Bear.
Role playing should also be a factor here.
Oh yeah.
If the bandit is beating up the barbarian and the rest of the party wants to do something, but they know they're going to get their ass kicked, I'm telling you, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. Someone throwing themselves in the way of it, going, "Go, please, please, please! No, can we stop, please?" And then you as a GM have to make a decision. How bloodthirsty is this bandit?
Mm.
Is he going to suddenly go, "I don't care what this person says, I'm going to keep going," or is he going to go,
But that's what the
Yeah.
dice.
"Teach your
He
friend
did it
some
with
manners," and then walk away? Like there's lots of options you can go with there. It doesn't have
There's
to
a number of times where I've
generate-
had there's a number of times where I've just had the opponent basically shout out, "Here's your chance to surrender," or "Here's your chance to stop," and we all back off. I was
We've
like,
all seen the Western where the bandit's like, "Stay down, kid." Kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
don't stay down, don't get up. Like there's tons of options you can pick, and none of them are punitive. They're all potentially role-playing advantage.
Mhm.
And that's what you should be teaching the new players is role-playing is an option.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. I mean, part of the point of that whole scenario was to try and set up get the players familiar. It was their first night in the town. It's a very rough place. There was no town watch. The law in that town were that bandit leader and his men, and the fact that they were charging a lot of businesses. There's protection racketeering going on, that sort of thing. And the idea was to lead them into a much more gentle adventure where some of the lower level banditry were trying to strong arm people, where the party could get involved there, and in the long term generate the ire of this bandit leader. But right at the beginning, it was the whole point of it was just to demonstrate that he was the law in this town.
Yeah.
The party chose to confront him straight away before they'd even worked that out.
Mm.
I can only really speak to my experiences, but I know that one of the players I've got for the game where Eli he's sitting out for the moment. I know he has got very deep personal beliefs of certain things that would be holding to American ideals, which I play on that because then I can use that to sort of shepherd him in the direction I think would be
As
fun
a
for.
sole American in this chat, I feel called out.
I mean, I don't know how else to really put it.
As not the sole Commonwealth member in this chat, I feel so vindicated right now.
Yeah, because I'm so archetypically American.
Not you. You know exactly.
I'm speaking
what
to
I'm talking
Saxius.
about, Eli. Oh, you are though. You are
Yeah.
so typically American. My God,
I
I can
know.
see the eagles perched behind you, sir.
Yeah, I'm just gonna got my crossed AR-15s tattooed on my back and
Well, Hulk Hogan's Real American starts blaring. Dun, 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 dun. Exactly.
signed autographed poster of Kid Rock in my bedroom. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I deserve that.
Yes, you do, Saxus. You do.
Yes.
No, but I get what you're saying. You're playing off of your the player's assumptions and beliefs and their personalities. And that's, I think, key to any. I mean, honestly, we're talking about GM, what makes a good GM, knowing your players and knowing what makes them bite. If you don't have a heroic bone in any player at your table's, body, sending out the helpless farmer as a motivator for the adventure is never going to work.
No.
Unless they just phone it in. Yeah. So, because then you'll get like, why would my character care? Why would I go after that? Why would I go after him? So
You have to set that. You have to set that expectation down right at the very start.
Mm.
That in this campaign, you are the good guys and you are here to help.
Yeah.
Oh,
Never. I never
you
set that
are
expectation.
selfish bastards who only care about profits and allow me to introduce you to my spreadsheets of jobs that you may now take on.
That's fair enough.
You are
That is
people in
fair.
the world. Make your choice, and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Or Saxius, you are skeevy goblins. Tell me about where you live.
Please, can I just move on? I have
What if,
don't
what if
deserve
your heroic
this.
team company name is Bastard Squad? I mean, you know, the players are kind of
You will
telling me what
never
kind of
move
game
on
they
from
wanna
that.
play.
You will never.
Do I want to know this goblin thing that keeps coming up, or
I'm
should I just be happy never knowing?
It's one of the earliest campaigns played on Yogg's channel, I think, wasn't it?
Against the Dark Master, where they were all goblins.
Yeah.
Shadow of the Demon Lords.
Shadow
Everyone
of the
played
Demon-
as
Oh, Demon Lord,
goblins.
Against the
was-
Shadow of the Dark Master. Fine, we've merged them
Yes.
together.
I want to play that game.
Damn. Yeah.
Against the shadow of the demon master, I'm in.
Yeah.
You do not want to know. Fair. If General Nut says I do not want to know, I'm just a squirrel. So I'll
Hey,
take
he
that nut.
contributed to the mayhem.
It was good, and it was so bad. I wasn't even part of it, but I got to hear about it all the time. And now my ears are scarred forever.
I think I'll just sit and type it out for at some point, and I'll try to make
Turn it into a children's book. There you go.
I mean, that sounds like it's yeah.
If you turn it into if you release it as a book for children, he'd be locked up for that because
But
some of the things
I
that
was going to
happen
say
are
it'd be
very
more
much
like
not children.
Brothers Grimm.
Well, maybe one of those children's books is actually intended for the parents, kind of like, go to fuck to sleep.
go on, Bill. You're wanting to say something. You're wanting to make commentary.
No, God, no. I was going to get myself in trouble. I'm 2004, 24. I've made a resolution to not get myself in trouble as much as possible. Unless I'm on Legion of Myth, and then who fucking cares?
We're on day 3. How are you doing with that?
Do we have
Not
a
well.
poll set up for that one?
I literally, that doorbell was me seeing something I've never seen before. A particular religion that likes to go door to door with an iPad, no less, wanting to talk. And my answer was pretty rude.
You mean you didn't welcome in and tell them how they should be doing it?
No. It was like, okay, you can fuck right off. Bye, slam. That was
No, welcome him in, and then confuse the hell out of him.
No, Joker. If you welcome them in, even after you kick them out, they'll keep coming back now because you let them in once. A friend of mine did that.
Don't get
One day she
confused
came
if you
home,
serve 'em
her
a cup of
entire
tea.
front door was pinned with Jesus fish with quotes in them.
You let them in, they'll tell you, no, this is where you slam the door in our face.
Anywho, clerics. How do you run clerics in your campaigns as a good DM? There we go.
Right, so we've covered introducing new players to the tone, and maybe you should do possibly a little bit of hand holding, but nothing too gratuitous. The liberal use of "Are you sure?" is possibly a good idea when a player's playing in their first few sessions. And then you've got to see when the players really sort of start to take the initiative and start to get into it. One thing I noticed in our OSE game, the highest level of casualties was during the first couple of sessions. And then people have calmed down and applied a lot more common sense. Isn't that right, Sean?
Yeah, I would say so. We've
Yes.
you have a list. You've got the list of casualties, don't you? You've got the full.
Yeah, there was a lot of
cemetery
casualties.
list.
Yeah, a lot of casualties on that first session. A lot of 3 or 4 characters went down.
I wasn't there for the first couple.
No.
I think the one caveat to all of that too is it depends on your style of play and what you're looking to get out of your games.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
mean,
of course.
if and that goes without saying for everything, but I think while it should go without saying, unfortunately, it seems to require saying a lot.
I like how I'm being judged for not letting the Jehovah's Witness into my apartment. Shut the fuck up. I'm not letting Jehovah's Witnesses. I have friends who are Johos.
Jehovah's Witness. You said they had an iPad. I thought it was a Jobsian witness.
No,
Steve
no,
Jobsian
Jobsian. Ooh, deep cut.
Mm.
But yeah, I think traumatizing players is something you can do accidentally in OSC. I have a 5e player who played OSC with us who, if I just mention a bridge, he's like, fuck the bridge. I'm never going on that fucking bridge. Because, 17 PCs at the bottom of that bridge later, they're like, they have trauma over the bridge, It's not my fault. There were goblin snipers in the original bridge.
Sorry, Bear.
Ahead,
the other side of the coin is you get DMs who are actively trying to destroy the players and oppose them, and I think that's a problem. So you don't want to be adversarial, and that's what I said about objectivity earlier. Is like you just want to let the situation play out. I don't feel the need to make a dungeon hard or make it lethal. I mean, there's going to be lethal elements already, but I don't need to force it. I don't need to nudge the players in that direction. And I think a lot of old school DMs do that. They're like, ha, I've got this dungeon, it's going to kill them all. And it's like, well, that's going a little too far in the other direction as well. And
Yes.
you mentioned the bridge, like what happened to that guy in the bridge, right? That scarred him for life. And I think you'll get a lot of, I've talked with players every once in a while who say that they hated old school because the DM was basically out to kill them. And I've played with adversarial DMs who are out to kill the players. Well, guess what?
So that's negotiable.
Yeah, but
fair.
But
fair.
Yeah. You get the point, and it's like, well, if I'm out to kill my players' characters, then they're going to die, right? As DM, I'm pretty much in control, so that's a really toxic mindset to have to deal with, and so players are going to have that bad experience. So you got to be careful of going the other side and actively trying to oppose the players.
Yeah.
Challenge the players, not oppose them. Right?
I don't even do that. I just the situation is what it is, and the challenge will come up on its own.
I mean,
Amazing you and I can role play together sometimes, Sean, but I fucking love you, brother.
I mean, yeah, I do think of ways to challenge them. I will admit, I'll throw in things I think, okay, this will be a challenge. I'd like to see how they get around it, but it is about, as you say, keeping things objective. In my mind is, if they come up with something that is feasible and dice land in their favor, let them have the success, because
you don't need to subvert it.
It's ultimately what we want. Most DMs want our players to succeed in the end, but we want them to work for it, and we want them to enjoy the challenge.
Yeah, I think the bad DMs though come in where they feel far too attached to the results of a given encounter or a given combat or something, forgetting that ultimately they have all the power in the room. And if you're playing a campaign, for example, and your players keep womping the King's Men, for example, you have it within your ability to have the next group of King's Men show up better equipped to handle the players. It's not a dick move, because if the king keeps hearing about his men getting trounced by this group of adventurers, okay, so we're not going to send in the guys wearing leather armor, carrying cudgels. It's going to be the guys in chain with spears and shields now.
But that's a natural, organic process. That's not the DM saying, I've got to punish the players.
But that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of DMs do forget that they have that ability, and they want to just smack the player down right then and there. So they feel the need to fudge the results or to bend the successes of their players and mute them to still claim their victory immediately. And they're the DMs who are trying to win, when ultimately they can win if they want to, because it's if they really wanted to get down to it, they have all the power in the room.
That's DMs who think they're playing chess against their players, right? The problem is most of the DMs I've met who think they're playing chess against the players are actually just playing checkers at this point. They just think they're playing chess because they think they're so fucking clever. ultimately, again, I go back to the game should be about challenging the players to resolve issues and learn about their characters and have adventures and have good times. And yeah, sometimes characters die. It happens. But you shouldn't be going out of your way to kill characters. Like you said, the progression. Okay, the leathers and cudgels didn't work. Let's send in the chainmail and the spears. That didn't work. All right, I got an order of knights standing by who are going to bring peace to this fucking town now, you know? And the players
Who's
earned
the
that.
Inquisitor, some whatever it is,
But the thing is, the players earned it, so that way
Exactly.
they shouldn't feel like they're being maltreated at that point. Though some players think anything is a
And
maltreatment.
it should make sense. It shouldn't go from cudgels and shields to a red dragon with a knight on it.
Mhm.
What?
I mean,
We have a
it could go that way.
We have a question here from Muktuk. Question for the panel. How about situations where, by rules as written, a player is a character? We're still coming back to directly killing our players. Character is
911.
instantly, Goblin Shaman gets a sleep spell off. What do you guys do? Excuse me.
Depends on the situation, but death is on the table.
First time I
My
ran
answer to
10 Delver, my goblin archers killed half the party because they had cover, and first level characters weren't good against arrows.
My answer to this is: do the enemies have anything realistically to gain by keeping the characters alive? If they're intelligent, and they do, then they might capture them. But if it's wolves, no, they'll eat them. If it's ghouls, no, they'll eat them. But if goblins might see them as a potential source of income.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Wolves will eat one of them, and the rest might still get a chance to wake up.
And make it the NPC just to prove a point.
So that's a good way to do it, actually. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I've go on.
I was just going to say, in the goblin case, I mean, this is something that happens. I had a friend complain that in our OSE game that why would he ever take a human fighter when he could take a dwarf, because dwarves get all the advantages. I'm like, well, goblins will kill dwarves on sight.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, so while the rest of the group is being carted off to prisoner for ransom, you're being instantly murdered.
Yeah.
You're also non-buoyant.
You might be kept for a sacrifice, though. Because,
maybe.
Goblin god, dwarf sacrifice,
But there's any number of answers to this, and do you instantly kill them? It's on the table, but you can also avoid it. That's why I like charisma rolls, right? It's like, oh, well, goblins look at their prisoners, and it's a positive roll. Okay, let's take them prisoner and see what we can do with them.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it. It's because this is where again charisma can be a good thing, where it can also be a situation of it might have been negotiations. There's a multitude of factors that can be the case. If one of the players are able to speak, goblins been able to communicate, has been trying to keep it, civil until things fell apart. They might go, well, this one speaks our tongue. We would like someone that can, translate and do these things. He might be a worthwhile slave. Then there are, opportunities for this. If it has been an ongoing conflict between the players and the goblins, and this is just the one where they were able to get the upper hand, I don't see goblins after multiple attacks really letting anyone live.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it's already cemented. They've come and attacked. They've probably done retaliations. At that point, the bad blood is just spilling up.
But even then, you can say, "Well, these are our hated enemies. Let's see them die slowly," and that gives they're taken prisoner. Right?
There's so many
trapped down in the Behir cavern, waiting for it to come to wake up and eat them. Or they're sold, chained up, and they're going to be sold to the evil wizard or the cult or whatever. I've had players get mad at me for monsters doing killing blows. Character gets dropped down and he's in combat with a particularly nasty foe, and the foe steps on him or stabs him when he's down and does the kill. And I'm like, it made sense. Is the evil knight going to not kill you when he's got you down?
No, it makes complete sense. And again, like if it's a case of using like evil knights, or if it's simply a case of the henchman's been told, these guys, we're paying you to prove that they're dead. We're not. We don't want. There's no alive bar in this bounty. There is just kill them. At that point, that's what they might do.
I would say specifically to the question though, just because Ross says that the guy is instantly slain doesn't necessarily mean that you have to kill him. If you don't feel that you don't want to, or it doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
It's an
there's a way out of
opportunity.
it,
You don't
isn't-
have
yeah.
to take it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Bear, you wanted to say something?
So I want to address something Eli had said, which was the whole thing about players getting mad at him for the characters giving the NPCs giving a coup de grace at the end of a fight or during a fight or whatever the case may be. And that to me is a question I'd like to see everybody answer here for the most part is that type of thing smacks of ego, player ego, right? Like my character's dead. And it's not, it's they're upset, not that it didn't make sense, but that they're upset. And that's something we run into a lot in a lot of different groups. You're going to run into player ego. How do you guys mitigate it? What do you guys do to mitigate player ego?
What Sean said, objectivity.
Okay, describe that, please. It's a nice word, but how do you do it? Show me an example if you could.
Certainly. So using so there's a number of different variations of the D&D with their own interpretations of how coup de grace can be done. So when this situation is being brought up, what I have in my experience, I've more often seen players initiate the coup de grace than me.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I always go, "Oh, wonderful! Let's pause the game. We've got to make a decision because we're about to make a decision that will be two-edged. This will be a blade I can wield against you. You can use it against me. Happy days. Are we doing instant kill? If so, then I will also be able to do this. And when the situations are appropriate, equally so, you can also do it. At which point, it is an agreement that the players put down. Similarly, so there are rules in the third edition where coup de grace is done by these mechanics. You do a save, blah blah blah. And in fifth edition, there is a set rule of you stab someone while they're down, they get 2 failed, death saves. They still have a chance after that. Smaller statistics, but there are things you can fall back onto. And that's what I mean by that. It's like you've got concrete things you can either point at and say these are the rules as written, or you can point back to a session where you, as a group, as a collective, all said, this is what we agreed at this instance, and we all agreed, yes, moving forward, here's what we're doing.
Yeah, I would say objectivity is a good thing, but I don't think not everybody's going to be able to handle objectivity. And it makes a good balm for the DM's soul, but a lot of players are not necessarily going to accept it. But then again, it comes down to players. Some people don't want it. And it's not even necessarily ego. Some people are just having a great time. They love their character. They're having a great time with it. They're having fun. They don't want to see the fun end. And I think that's where some understanding comes in mind and finding ways to help them understand that that's not the end. This is the big problem I have with 5e players when I'm trying to get them to accept some of the more lethal rules that are in 5e that you can put in there, or the limiting. It's like, look, just because your character is down or dead doesn't mean the adventure is over. You can make a new character, and that character can go on a quest to try and participate on the quest to try and bring your old character back, whatever, or maybe, that last character was good, but what about your next character? You got all that experience now. You can roll it in, make your next character your old character's friend, looking to find out what I did that on this freaking World of Darkness game I played. It was a World of Darkness Cyberpunk mashup game, and my first character I ever played, it was an online game back in the old Mush Mucks days, and I came on there and played my character, died within a half an hour of getting onto the server. And my next character was basically the same character with some tweaks, who was looking for his old army buddy who came to town and just dropped off the map. That was my new character.
Dog tags where we died.
Yeah, have fun with it. I mean, that's it. I think as a DM, one of the best things you can do to help players through character death is to not let it sting so much, or even take a moment in game with the player and let the players play out the effect of death.
The morning, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because then that player whose character dies gets to have that weird moment that we all kind of, what would my funeral be like, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly dive in and make 3 points. Welcome, Game Masters. I think it's the first time you've popped in on one of my Midweek Geeks. We're in the presence of YouTube royalty here. He's got a fairly big channel as Game Masters.
And a big beard.
And a very big beard, yes. Beard royalty and gaming royalty. So welcome, Game Masters. The There was one other thing I was going to say, which I've completely forgotten. But something, yes, because this has been sat on. I'm a pedant, right? You know, I'm a pedant. You know, I'm an English pedant, a language pedant. 2 people on my stream have used the term coup de grace.
Coup de grace.
Coup de grace.
Cut the grass.
Cut the grass.
Coup de grace is the correct pronunciation.
No, it's now cut the grass. We like it. We're changing it.
Cut the grass.
So, as the only French speaker on the panel, in English, it's coup de grace.
It's not. It's coup de grace. GRACE.
I know.
With a circumflex.
The Daffy
But
Duck,
English-
Gracie.
English has transformed it into coup de grace versus French, which is coup de grace.
As far as I'm, English can fuck off. As far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
you're a
because-
pedant who massacres the English language on a regular basis, John. So I don't think I'm going to take lectures from you on French at the same time.
Yeah, Squirrel Hermit got it. Coup de Gracie.
And also, what Eli said earlier reminds me of this simple statement, which is, "For pity's sake, give them a moment."
Exactly.
The other thing I was going to mention is our combined simulcasting has just hit 57 people. That is by far a record.
Sweet.
59 now. That is by far a record. And Nightbot looks like it's working. So
You
get
just
your
had to
Nightbot.
kick it a couple times, right?
Yeah.
Smack upside the TV there.
So let's just test it because Hungar did say hello a while ago. Let's see if Nightbot comes in. Come on.
Maybe your
Come on.
hunger command's
Have
broken.
you fed the Nightbot?
Do
well,
not
somebody
feed
has.
the
Knowing
Nightbot.
John,
Do not
no.
look directly at the Nightbot. Do not engage the Nightbot.
It looks like the Hungar command isn't working. The Saxius command is working.
There you
More-
Well, let's coup de grace on this tangent.
Thank you.
Right. Anyway, back to where I see. Yes, the bear one's working. Good.
I'm sure Bear's thrilled.
Manfred made a good point in that the approach to what we've been talking about, it does depend on the game system you're playing. And that's where our own flexibility has to come in. We have to be flexible as DMs, GMs, in our own attitude towards the table based on the game system we're running for them. People will come in with different attitudes, playing different systems.
Yeah. And also, I mean, again, it comes back to what you're trying to get out of it. All of us could play D&D, but what kind of D&D are we looking for? Are we looking for gritty, deathly, deadly D&D, or are we taking cues from movies and books where the hero gets pretty much dead, and then, next chapter, next scene, an old man walks by, pulls him out of the dirt, puts him to his cabin, takes him to his cabin, heals him up for a montage of a week, and then he's out there in the backyard, firing his pistol again, at bottles on the fence, using a Western analogy. But I don't think any of those are wrong. It just depends on what you're looking for, because we've all seen lots and lots of examples where dead does not mean dead.
Mhm.
How often do you see that main character just absolutely left bleeding and for naught, and then an NPC finds him?
Still fight.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
we talk about D&D. I mean, with the right opposite ends of the spectrum, you get 5e and old school, say old school essentials, just for a system. And I mean, one time I heard it described that 5e is anime, whereas old school essentials is, swords and sorcery pulp, right?
Yeah, well, nobody expects your superhero character to actually be dead, because people don't die in superhero universes.
But that
Bucky
expectation
came back. All bets are off.
Yeah,
That is true, but my Uncle Ben's still dead.
That is true.
I think he's the only one who's never come back.
It's the one rule. So I got a comment on that, but I also need to do a little more pedantry towards Yogg, if that's okay with everybody.
Go for it.
Coup de grace.
Coup de grace.
Coup de grace.
Coup de grace.
So
Good
coup de
grass
grace.
what?
That's how you say it. You don't pronounce the d so hard.
Is that just in?
It's just the
Quebec
way the word,
French?
it's just the way the expression works in French. It's coup de grace, not coup de grace. But anyway, that's
Coup de
pedantry.
grace. Coup de grace.
Pedantry aside, that's something you have to decide at the start of the campaign, because an OSC campaign can be cinematic as well. right? If you're just,
Mhm.
depending on how you run it and the choices you make and all that type of stuff. So for me, it's always going to boil down to what kind of a campaign you and your players have decided you're going to play, right? Like there's that meme where it's like Icewind Dale and Eberron arguing over which one's the real grim dark thing, and then Ravenloft in the corner makes some comment about amateurs, and then behind him Dark Sun appears like a shadow, right? So you're going to have to decide with your players what kind of campaign you're going to be running, whether it's going to be heroic, cinematic, gritty, grim, dark, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think Middle Earth lends itself particularly well to gritty, grim, dark, murder hoboing. Greyhawk might very easily, though, right? So it's up to you to decide. At least that's my 2 cents on it.
Coming back to the whole the death thing, there's something I flagged up about 10 minutes ago in chat. And this is what Bear says about things, and Eli said about laying things out at the start. Something I have tried to push in various campaigns with various groups is the idea, that old school idea of everybody having a stable of characters. And that's something we've got in our OSE games. And I'm really glad of it, because it's one of the things that makes our OSE game feel like an authentic old school game, because people have got multiple characters. They can bring in different characters at different times, depending on who's running the game and where the characters are and what the characters did last session and what have you. I love the idea of giving the responsibility to the players to build up a folder of characters in a more open world in a fantasy game, and then just letting them go to town with whatever characters they've got. It's up to them how they play them. If they put all the eggs in one basket and that character dies, oh well. It was up to you.
I mean, if you can pull that off logistically, great. So I think that's the other thing too, is like, what do people have time and availability for? I mean,
yes.
That is an ideal for gaming, especially old school gaming, because it's kind of how it was intended to be played. That said, we never played it that way. If we had multiple characters going, it was usually because they were in different campaigns and with different groups. But we
didn't play it that way. But that's one thing that makes me feel good about the games that go at the moment, is we are now.
Yeah. I guess I was just to say, I mean, I know, for example, I don't have time to participate in enough games to have a stable of characters. So while that is great, and it's awesome that you have it, it's an ideal that's not necessarily obtainable for everybody. So if that's the case, then you have to kind of flex your game style. You might be a little bit more lenient with your players if that's the style at the table that you want. And that's what keeps your game going. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to kill a character, but at the same time, there may be more prisoner taking or left in the mud bleeding. I mean, if they died in a field in farmland, it's very possible a farmer may discover them before they died and nurse them back to health. It makes for a good story too.
It depends whether the farm dog got to them first or not.
Well, that is true. I mean, and nothing says they have to come back in one piece.
No,
they get brought back to life, and that arm will never work again. Going back to the whole Western analogy, your shooting arm is for shit now. You're going to have to learn how to shoot with your other arm.
Even that's what their mental well-being is half of what it used to be.
Saxius has to leave soon. Shouldn't we let Saxius have a final say? Yes, Saxius is my bro now, so I'm going to always defend Saxius.
That's never. Thank you very much.
Plus,
it annoys John, so that's just bonus points.
Saxius has let us know. Have you got to leave the stream for good? Have you just got to pop off for a short while?
No, I am going to have to just go and sleep now. So yeah, I'm going to have to leave now. So no, it's been a lot of fun. I again, props to everyone here. Found very engaging, very good discussions. Everyone, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe, for giving your insights, at least from the players' point. It's great. It's honestly refreshing to hear that. So thank you very much. And have fun, guys, and try to stay a little bit on topic.
For you, maybe.
I'll take it.
My gut tells me no.
All right, take care, gents.
Cheers.
Later, man.
This
The
does mean that
Shed
we had.
coming in?
We did. He's not lurking in the background at the moment. But if either Iman or Daniel are watching, the spot is open for either of you two to come in. Whoever gets here first out of you two, I'll give you 10 minutes, and then I'll open it up to anybody else.
How about the shadow?
You can fight for it. So I like. I mean, what Roland says here is. I enjoy the lethality of Call of Cthulhu, or the potential lethality. If I'm careless, the world is unforgiving. If I'm thoughtful, my chances improve. And that's exactly what the effect I want to portray is when I run the game. If you are careful, then then your chances of surviving are naturally increased. It's making the world feel more realistic. I know people don't like the term realistic sometimes, but if you're running a game like Call of Cthulhu, you have to have that sense of realism.
I tend to go with the term believable rather than
believable.
realistic.
Okay.
Authentic. Yeah.
Even with Call of Cthulhu, I mean, you know, I think there's a lethality does not necessarily mean deadly either. I mean, and it does not necessarily mean absolute. For example, Call of Cthulhu, my campaign, we had a guy who got stabbed in the gut, taking serious damage, but they were in the middle of the city on the steps of the city museum when it happened. The party dispatched the guy who stabbed him super quick, and they were able to get him to the hospital. It was a pretty lethal blow, especially by Call of Cthulhu standards, but he lived because they were able to get him to the hospital. Now, that also meant that they had to deal with a monster with an infirmed party member in the hospital later on, and that was fun. But
I think, I mean, most Call of Cthulhu games are set in a version of our real world.
Yeah.
So, and Command Post Gaming says, yeah, realism is fine. The version is tedious. And I think if you're playing a game like Call of Cthulhu, you've got to put in those mundane elements that make the world feel authentic, believable.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, though, about character. I mean, those elements are still there in other settings. The facilities available to people are not necessarily going to be as good as they would be in the early 20th century, modern times, whatever. But they're still there. I mean, healers exist, non-magical healers exist. People get injured in real worlds. People get beat up and near death and still manage to live. They're usually not right afterwards, but that could be a thing that you throw out there. Especially if you're in a group that you have a vested interest in trying to keep the characters alive. So maybe, I mean, Omen Owl will probably cheer for this one, but use the lingering injuries as an option, if you're doing that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, Dirty History Hobbies mentions about having players control multiple characters at once. That's not what I was going for. I mean, the idea of having a folder of characters is you've got probably 4 or 5 characters you can pick from for any given session or adventure. But you only pick one. But it's up to you which one you pick.
Oh, so you're playing Cyberpunk with me. Cool.
But Bear, you were going to say something.
Yeah,
well, I was going to say the lingering serious injury and lingering things, like my brain no function good now, from 5e and the Dungeon Master's Guide are fantastic things. It really changes the entire way 5e plays at that point, and I used them in the Final Age setting when I was doing it in 5e, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, players hated it. They absolutely despised it, but they liked it when it happened to their enemies. So, Goose Gander situation, right? But it changed the entire dynamic of everything in the game all of a sudden, because now they're missing limbs, they're having permanent limps, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's something I think I prefer that for a darker, consequence-filled world than bag of hit points. You know what I mean?
Rather than dead is dead,
Yeah.
Welcome, Manfred. I held you back just to see if either Iman or Daniel was going to come in because they were waiting earlier.
No problem.
But
I considered several times whether I should come in with this haircut or not, but anyway,
I say nothing.
I will say, and we now have an Omen Owl lurking in the background as well. But I have set a limit on tonight of 6.
Thank you, Manfred, for getting in first. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to put my 3 cents in on all of this, and I basically was just going to probably say the things that were already said, which is, there's like this continuum between, the GM outright killing characters and playing checkers with his players, like Bear was talking about, which is obviously not really cool. And then the opposite end of the pole, where you're basically having a revolving door and you're just reviving characters who've died because, I don't know, your characters are too sensitive to deal with it somehow or something. I don't know. And so there's obviously a continuum there, and it's a matter of degrees, and it depends a lot on who you're playing with, what system you're playing, and what you want, obviously. So I'm just basically reiterating things that you guys have already covered, but
Yeah. I would also say that your players don't get to really determine how it goes too. Like I think we've all had that player. Hopefully, maybe we haven't, but the player's like, if my character dies, I'm going to quit. Okay, well, bye.
Bye.
yeah. I think
You're a poor sport. Yeah.
A lot of it depends too on whether you're playing with open GM rules or not, because you'll always have that one player who rolls badly, and they'll have the best, most skilled character in the whole group, but they'll just roll ones or whatever a critical fail is all the time.
That's the universe balancing the game. You
Yeah,
don't have
and
to
then
do anything.
And then if you're playing with open GM roles, you can also roll critical hit and wipe them out, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I definitely don't have any problem with letting characters die heroically or letting them die if that's the case. But sometimes you're playing a game where each player character has a very important role to play within the storyline, and that can kind of sort of kill the mood if the guy that you're doing this whole thing for ends up dying. And some of our OSE games, it's like, or some of our games have been like, hey, wait a minute, is there anybody in this party that like actually started, that had the original, that got the original contract of what the original goal was of this entire adventure? And it's like, oh no, they're all dead. Like, well, what's the point then of like, why would any of these PCs then carry on with this objective?
Well, they shouldn't have to. They should say, well, we've got our own goals. I think you're setting yourself up for failure if the players are fixed points in the plot. If you don't have that flexibility of moving on when things happen, then yeah, you'll have a table full of people just sort of scratching their heads going, what do we do next?
Sure, yeah, but sometimes you want to run a campaign like that too, or sometimes you want to run
like a plot campaign or a prophecy campaign.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
I did that. It did not work out well. The main sort of quote unquote hero got killed in a fight, and the dice killed him, and it was fine. And the rest of the players immediately derailed the campaign to find a way to revive him, and they wound up going into places I never. And I asked one of the players, I was like, "What the hell are you guys doing? What's there's still a quest you guys have to do." And he said, with his charming French Canadian accent, "Yeah, but Haragorn is dead. We got to get Haragorn back, or the quest no go." And I was like, "Shit, I didn't see the character in that way, but okay, let's see where this goes."
That's how you fix those campaigns. If you're choosing to run a story-based campaign, you either let the players go on those side quests, and that's kind of one of my big banner cries is that hardship and adversity in campaigns is just where the story comes from. A player's death doesn't necessarily mean he's dead. If they're a beloved character or they're necessary to the story, then it makes absolute sense that his fellows are going to find a way to bring him back or heal him or replace him. We need the blood of the one true king. The brother that's on our side is dead, but there's another brother. We have to go find him. New PC.
No.
There's the bastard son.
And through their doing that, they cashed in like credits with powers that they had put them on task to have the body preserved, and they went all out, and they forced me to explore parts of my campaign setting that were just notes. You know what I mean? I suddenly had to bring these places to life as they were traveling to them to get to where they wanted. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And that goes back to what we were saying at the start about flexibility and adaptability. Because I had to. I had no, otherwise the campaign was over. right? Like I couldn't. No, you must go on the quest. No, you can't do this. No, okay. Well, I guess we're doing this now. Let's go. So it's fun.
Yeah, I want to jump in on the flexibility and adaptability thing versus the stonewalling and railroading, and I think that there's a balance to be struck there too. Obviously, if you're playing like a one-shot game that has, it's a module that you guys have decided you're going to play, and you've got maybe new players that you haven't played with before, then I think it's quite legitimate to be less flexible and adaptable and to stonewall a little bit or even railroad a little bit to move the characters back into the pre-agreed upon framework. Now, if you've got all the time in the world and you want to go and explore beyond that, then that's okay. But it all has to be sort of like within what you've just the framework that you've decided upon that you're going to do. When you started the game. If you're doing a sandbox and you've got all kinds of time to run a campaign, then you can let them go whatever direction they want.
I feel like with one shots, though, there should be. I'm not going to say there is. There should be a certain buy-in, a concession as to we need to keep things on track, and you're not out of place as a GM when you're running a one shot going. Okay, we're either going to hand wave that scene. You want to go spend all day in the library trying to research stuff about the great old ones. Cool. Give me a die roll and we'll call it good. You can kind of work your way through that. But I think the players do have to buy in at that point too and say, kind of agree that
we have a task. Let's finish it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but a lot of those old modules, like especially if you're doing like old D&D first edition or something like that, how they're written. They don't have that buy-in necessarily. It's just sort of a pre-accepted or preordained thing back in the day that the party's working together and they're gonna stick to the task at hand.
That's the play style of the time, though.
Right, and a lot of the new players, I don't think they really they get that, and a lot of the new players also, they're like, well, I want to role play a character, and I don't want to spend 2 days or days thinking about my character and then have him just be killed. And like when we play OSE, we know there's going to be a high lethality rate and you're going to go through characters left and right. But I think it can be detrimental to the cohesiveness and the character interaction. A lot of the newer, younger players are into the character interactions and the role play than they are into what we used to do back in the day. And so I think there's balances to be struck there, and you kind of got to get all that figured out in the session 0 or whatever you want to call it. We didn't call it that back then, but when you set the game up, basically you got to talk about all that stuff really well so you know what's going on. But I'm just stating the obvious. So
I think Captain Crowley sort of sums up the difference between one shots and other styles of play there. But just sort of generalizing about old school modules, I think they really came into 3 camps. You had the pure sandbox. You had a module with a little bit of plot that could be woven in some way. I'm talking about pre-1982 modules here.
You might want to give some. So sorry for just jumping. You might want to give an example of each one because there are a lot of people that maybe don't know.
A pure sandbox, B2, keep on the borderlands.
Yep.
Okay, here's a location, here's a base, off you go, DM. A module which has got a plot, but a lot of ways of going around it, and there's still a lot of freedom for the DM to work. Sinister Secret Assault Marsh. And then you've got the tournament adventures, the converted tournament adventures. The converted tournament ones tended to be somewhat more linear, I think. The Slavers series, for example. It's quite a linear. The dungeons themselves are pretty linear, and it is a linear series. Some are more linear than others.
Right.
But then we got sort of like more leaning into the story elements of modules. Certainly in the early 80s, when sort of Hickman effect took hold.
Yep.
But,
Ray asked a good question. just before the
Is
one
that
you
the-
highlighted.
Is that the one that I was planning on starring before I saw this one from Captain Crowley? Which was
Yeah, the one where it's, does the panel prefer? Yeah,
Yes,
that's the one.
I saw that one. Yeah.
Because I think this is important, right? Because there's a certain level of individual style that's going to come in to a game, to a campaign that you're running based on what you prefer. And some players are like, well, I don't, like I do it this way, and that's I don't subscribe to the one true way mentality. Like I just do not subscribe to that at all. So for me, I'm curious because I have opinions about the GMs on this panel from what I've heard, but I'd like to hear their answers to this question. I think they all know what mine is, so I won't even bother telling you. But I'm curious as to see what they are.
For me, honestly, I tend to have campaigns that develop things that are going on, but I am very open if the players want to go in any direction to achieve that. My current campaign was that they're dealing with this dragon, and they have gone on a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride that I had never expected, but I have rolled with and made cool stuff. For them to I mean, they're like, well, we could go to we should find an ancient dragon temple and try and talk to Bahamut and see if he'll help. I'm like, okay, that's a way you could handle this. Now, how do I make this happen? And it made sense in my world. I mean, honestly, there are a lot of times for me personally where, like, even if I didn't have that as an idea, it's just too good of an idea or a solution, and I'll just create it and throw it in the world. I'll like look at my world and I'm like, well, there's a place that's on the map. It's got a name, but I haven't given any details to it. Well, now I know what it is. And so now the sunken lands are this. There used to be this big kingdom, and that's how. And I mean, by the time I was done, I had
10 miles in that direction. Yeah.
I had explained why there are Dragonborn and Draconians in my campaign world, even though I'd never really thought about it before. And now I had lore, just because my players decided to do the one thing that I never figured they would do. I figured they would go gather items, go deal with the dragon, and then come back and deal with the other dragon. And no, now they've been extra planner at this point in the campaign trying to deal with this shit. And they have a time limit. They know how much time they have to deal with it. So they're coming up with some fancy, interesting ways to handle it. But going back to the question, I have a story, but whether the party wants to engage with it or chooses to go after it doesn't matter to me, because the world will function. Like, for example, when the dragon that set everything in motion shows up at their village and says, you're going to take care of this other dragon for me, or I'm going to roast your village. If the players went, well, their village would have got roasted. So,
I mean, what you said there pretty much is exactly what Command Post Gaming has said. Sandbox with a story occurring within it that the players do not have to engage with the story.
And how they engage with it is not important to me as much as just, are they playing in the world I set forward? I create worlds and I come up with interesting things going on with them. And sometimes the players take care of it. Sometimes they solve the issue to where they figure it's fixed and they didn't. And then it comes back to haunt them, like the haunted goat that they ran into at level 1 that ended up being the harbinger of an ancient evil.
That is an excellent tavern name.
The haunted
goat.
There you go.
Yeah, use that.
You may have it, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I agree. That's my ideal for a fantasy game, like a D&D style game. The world goes on. The players can do what they want pretty much within it, but there are hooks, there are stories, there are things going on in the world that they can interact with. But as regulars know, I also like playing horror investigative games, and they are more story based generally, and by their very nature they are a bit more linear, a lot more linear. But it depends on the game. It depends on the game. It depends on the setting. It depends on the system, and depends on the group. For me, my preference.
Oh, go ahead.
Go on, Manfred.
I was just going to say, if you're playing Call of Cthulhu, it's kind of hard to do a sandbox sort of campaign, I think.
You can.
You can, sure, yeah,
Not
yeah.
gonna end
Happy to
well.
be done, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends how close to the precipice of doom is your campaign set, because you could do a very open world. We know that there's evil out there, and the players just kind of
They have
decide
to find it.
where
yeah.
they're going to go. We're going to go to the jungles of Borneo today because we read about this thing that you could do rumor tables just like you do in a fantasy game, and just have this world hopping, almost pulpy style, setup, at least not in play style.
That ends in rank madness, screaming terror.
We're going to go get the idol from the temple in Borneo. Oh, they didn't mention the evil spider goddess that's there.
Borneo, sweet Borneo.
Omen Owl's making some because he's sort of waiting in the wings.
You know
Right.
what? I'll tell you what. I've had my say. I would like to eat my supper before my show tonight. So how about I bounce out and let Omen Owl come in?
You're going to leave me alone with Omen Owl.
It's entirely up to you, Bear. I mean,
I feel bad that I listen. It's the Canadian in me. I feel bad that he's stuck in the back rooms trying to look. But what about this? He's like the NDP in the '80s in our country. But I have an idea. No one's listening to him, right? So I feel bad.
But now there'll be 3 colonists in here. I mean, you're aware what you're doing. You're
3 what?
3 colonists in here.
It's been a while since we call ourselves that.
Yeah, we prefer the term provincial. At least it's less insulting.
Okay, 3 provincials. There we go.
I'm fucking with you. I don't give a shit. Well, Omen Owl says he can wait. Fuck him. He can wait then.
Oh, okay.
I was just trying to be nice.
Okay.
In terms of playstyle, I more or less align with Eli and John. I like setting up the world. Things are going on in the world, but the players interact as they will. And I, as a DM, just like to, here's the setting, players interact, and let's see what happens. I have no predetermined outcome. I have no desire for a campaign to go any specific direction. I just want to see what happens. And that's why I try to, I said objectively earlier, I like to just sort of react as the dice dictate and as makes sense in given context. NPCs will react according to their station, according to who they are, the player interactions, etc. But I don't like to predetermine outcomes. Even my Night Below game, which is arguably a bit linear, it's sandbox linear, but they're not tied to that framework. They can leave any time. Now, as players, they're like, well, we want to finish it, so I don't have to force them on it. But they say, hey, this is too much for us. Let's get out of Dodge. And then I'll adapt. I just want to see what happens.
It was the same with my Lost City game. I seeded the Lost City into my game world that they were playing in. They followed the hook and they started diving into the Lost City.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, the mere fact that they played the Lost City encountered these ancient factions, which I tied to my in-game gods, but older versions of the in-game gods, that actually will add. If that game had continued, because sadly we haven't played it for a long time, then what it would have done, it would have had an impact on what happens in the world above, because they were finding things about what the gods were like before, and finding ancient lore regarding their gods from a time before their own works were written. And of course, they hadn't gone into Lost City, they'd never have found all that, and the world would have turned out differently. But as it is, that game was mostly one that we played a lot during COVID lockdowns and stuff like that. We decided to give another guy a chance of DMing because he was new and he was eager, wanted to run something, and he's continued. So it's on the back burner. It's there for them to go back to should they want to.
So I also am a world builder kind of person. I'll make a setting or a sandbox, and I will either put the characters in location or discuss with them about where they come from, what their backstories are, that sort of thing. And then I'll put 5, 6, 7 different possibilities out there for them, and they can either take one of those or they can come up with their own thing, and it goes from there. And that's kind of like how I like to roll with that sort of thing. However, sometimes where I have a new group, there are players that they say, well, let's try this or let's try that. And a lot of times in that case, we'll agree to do a one-shot adventure in that game system, just to see how it is. And then if they like it, we may continue with those characters, and then I'll expand the module, put a background in or something like that, or put, add the countries around wherever they are to it, and expand it that way into a sandbox. But it just depends on what we're doing, basically. So I prefer to do the sandbox and have avenues that go off, and then they can pick and choose, or they can do their own thing.
Yeah,
For me,
I'm the antithesis of all of that. Sadly, I'm the odd man out on this one for sure. With the Belgariad being my favorite fantasy book and Lord of the Rings being something I've enjoyed greatly over the years, I'm far more into there's a plot, but I take the Neil Gaiman school of thought, which is these are the places I want to see the players or the events I want to have happen. How we get there, well, there's no map. That's going to be up to them to get us there, but their characters are involved in the world and have destiny, or at least something on their side. And I know a lot of D&D old schoolers, when I talk about this, they're like, railroad. It's not rail. But there's purpose.
I've run plenty of story campaigns. They're good too.
I find that it's more the younger players that have this idea of railroad as a term in their heads, and they all seem to think that they know what it means, but I don't know if many of them have actually run games or not. So
or actually experienced a real railroad game, right?
Yeah.
You can blame it on YouTube.
I go left. The DM says no. You go right. That's the railroad.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, there's. I remember this one campaign, we did a melee campaign one time, and we had a GM who was very flexible, very adaptable, but he also had an idea about where he wanted to go. It's just that he was a bit slow on getting everything developed because he had lots of drinking to do and other things to do at the time. And so I remember we got into this dungeon, and I believe it was Melee the Fantasy Trip, and we came to a part where there was like a big bugbear there, and he had a big sign behind him that said, go the other way, you'd be better off fighting a whole army of goblins. And that was because he hadn't built that part of the dungeon out yet. And of course, we as players, we decided to take on this bugbear, and it actually worked out well for him. It was all open rolls, and one of us ended up getting our head chopped off by the bugbear, and then the rest of us ran. I think we lost like 2 characters, and then everybody ran, and we ended up fighting the whole army of goblins then, which was kind of the plan. So now, is that railroading? Is that stonewalling? Like how do you define that? Where do you put that? And it's also, for me, it's very difficult for me to be a minimalist GM. I'm kind of like Bear then too. When I get into world building, I start to obsess about things. But I do try to. Well, you said that you were obsessive compulsive.
I'm insane.
Yeah,
my world building is insane.
I'll sit there, and instead of like making the Haunted Goat Tavern where they're going to meet, and maybe some couple of buildings in the town where they're going to have the encounter, I'll sit there and I'll like map out the floor plan of every freaking house in this village.
I'm not that bad.
I used to be like,
I'm exaggerating,
but I got better.
But then they'll go some other direction. They'll leave the town then, and I have to start the next place. So I do try to prepare locations, and I do try to prepare like key encounter areas. But sometimes I am not quite as good at being an impromptu, flexible, adaptable GM. And then you need a map or something, because my players love maps. They like to be tactical, and so then that's kind of difficult when you're trying to be flexible and have to come up with stuff like that on the fly.
Well, my current campaign, they've been put on a quest, and in the last adventure we played before the holidays, things went south quickly in a situation, and the 3, 1 NPC and 2 PCs that were the big damn heroes all got killed by each other in a moment, leaving the 2 not big damn hero PCs and 1 NPC going, well, I guess we should continue the quest, shouldn't we? And they're not the fighters, they're not the magic users, they're like the really low end characters, right? And they're just like, it's hilarious watching them have this reaction. Oh, we got to keep going now, okay? Because those other 3 characters may have had important plot points to bring out at some point in the story, but they're dead now. So much for that. And we'll see where the campaign goes next. But I don't like when people accuse story narrators of being frustrated novelists. It's like, no. If I was a frustrated novelist, I wouldn't let any player touch my world. because I would be a control freak about it at that point. I would want it all to be what I see as the story. I like having the players interact with the world because they're going to do shit I could never think of, and that makes it come alive and feel vibrant and more exciting to me, you know? So
I think if anybody ever accused me of being a frustrated novelist, my answer to that would be, do you have any fucking idea how long it takes to make these maps?
You're a frustrated cartographer, not novelist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The one thing that really helped me with story campaigns and like this idea, that I used to run a lot of, back in the day, it was kind of almost everything we ran was kind of like what Bear was talking about, where we got key points and we kind of go point to point and, or not point to point, but, how they get there. But there are certain things that have to happen. And then I started thinking about like everything we see in like movies and books. I started looking at those as the end result of an active campaign and not the ideal for how a campaign should be run. Like, imagine that your favorite book, your favorite, movie, your favorite comic book, whatever it is the end result of all of the random shenanigans that came up in the course of a campaign. That's just the route that they took.
Yeah.
Given all of that randomness. And then it's really easy to just accept that you don't have to, let's say, to use Lord of the Rings, got to get the ring to Mount Doom. Cool. Who the hell cares how they managed to do it? Just as long as the campaign eventually goes that way. And if it doesn't, well, then you have your epilogue.
Well, Tolkien was a bit of a fucking stonewaller. We should go through Moria. No, Moria's a bad idea. All right, we'll go through the Passage Cataracts. Fuck you, Cataracts is a no-go. All right, we can't go through the... I guess we're going
was
to
a
Moria.
railroading DM. But although, here's the deal. I will say the difference between a railroad DM can be so narrow. You mentioned, for example, your melee campaign. Where it would have become a railroad DM situation is if you guys had decided to go beyond that sign, and he just flat out said, "No, you can't. You have to go the other way."
Wait, GM. We want to use the eagles to fly into Mordor. You can't find them. They're off doing eagle stuff somewhere.
Well, that can happen. And for example, to use the Tolkien reference, sure, they wanted to go over the mountains. He clearly had Moria figured out, so he's like, nope, Saruman comes up with a big ass blizzard. You can't make it. That is a way
stuff can happen.
That's a way to have your railroad and eat it too. I guess you kind of if the bugbear guy allows you to go beyond that sign, for example, your GM again. And then has something happen subsequently that then prevents you from going into the part that he hasn't mapped out yet or routes you back around. If he's doing his job right, you'll never know. And you'll be happy with the solution. Where it becomes railroady is where he's just like, no, you can't do it. Or you have to go here. And it's clear that he's being obstructive. Because we've seen, like, in Lord of the Rings, for example, they could have taken the eagles. Fine. Wahir is not going to listen to you. You failed your reaction check and to put us into Sean's realm. You go into your encounter, you do your reaction rolls. The King of the Eagles is not having any of it. No free ride.
Oglath did a really good little cartoon about the Eagles situation where they're on the Eagles and one of the halflings like, hey, why don't we just take these guys to Mordor instead of walking? And then one of the other hobbits falls off the eagle and the eagle just eats him like a fucking tick. And then the other hobbit's like, okay, walk a clock, let's go.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, you that could go so many ways too, because you could, okay, fine, you're flying there. The only reason the eagles can get to him at the end is because Sauron's power is all shattered and the orcs are in shambles. Anyways, you try flying a bunch of eagles there while he's still in power and the orc armies are all still in place. All those ballista bolts come flying up from fucking Mordor and end the great race of the eagles.
The eagle argument
squadron of
Nazgûl. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's a squadron of Nazgûl around there somewhere too. But anyway,
exactly.
Well,
you want to do now? You got Top
squadron,
Gun with eagles and Nazgûl.
but the thing is, just that whole eagle argument is like it has aggravated me since it started because it's just like I'm a clever nerd. And it's like, okay, you're a fucking moron if you think that was the solution without thinking deeper. That's a surface level thought to go, we can use the eagles. well, can you? And like, Eli, you pointed out a bunch of different ways it could blow up in their face, or it could be not an option. I would never, ever want to play in a game where Sean was reffing and I went to talk to eagles, because it would just be fuck. My dice would hate me, and Sean would happily have me eaten by an eagle, because that's my objective
They're not
stance,
gonna
and I
eat
get
you.
that.
They're intelligent eagles.
Hey, they're carnivores. But like,
But you forget, Barry, you would have the choice
So
of
am
whether or
I,
not to go to
but I
visit those
still
eagles in the
don't
first
eat
place.
all meat.
well, yeah, we also would have the choice of just throwing the ring in a fucking river in your campaign too, and yeah, fuck this thing, Like,
That's true. They're like,
Mhm.
or Bilbo just keeps it.
yeah,
Like, adventure's over.
yeah.
Anyway,
Gandalf's player sucks.
I'm going to call Saxius for a moment here. I just want to go. I want to go to this. This is just a response to something we said earlier. When running published modules, you tell the players that it is a published module, or just plunk it down wherever they are, and they never know if it was Lost Caverns or Descent.
My answer is easy. I don't run published modules.
Yeah.
I do. I run a whole ton of them, and I seed them. I seed them in. I don't say if you go here on the map, it'll be such and such, the Lost City, or here. They're seeded in through clues and interaction.
I would love to have that sort of approach in a regular face-to-face game, but the approach I used more recently, I introduced a load of 5th edition players to AD&D, and I said, okay, this campaign, I'm running this for as much through my nostalgia as a chance for you guys to experience some of the great adventures that I remember from when I was a kid. We're going to be playing through a series of my favorite older modules. And they knew what modules they were playing, but they knew nothing about them, which was key. And they enjoyed them. And I've run a few modules for D&D in my Discord, and I specifically advertised that game as I'm going to be running the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. If you've never played this adventure, you're welcome to join this game. Because people would say, John, you talk about this adventure all the time. We've never played it. I would like to start playing it. So I set it up specifically as a session to play that game. But I would love to see them into a campaign. I just haven't. I have sort of, but not in recent years.
The few times I have run published adventures, usually they're not whole cloth anyways. I often steal a huge chunk of it. I tend to integrate them into my world. Players will find out, and also in my groups is I just bought this module, and they know it's coming. So suddenly when they're on a keep on the Borderlands, they're like, all right, well, we know what module we're in, but am I going to sit there and say, are we going to have that moment where the player's like, he said the thing, the Lost Caverns Associates, it was named.
Yeah, I really do set modules either. But I have done what you're talking about as well, where you take certain aspects, or perhaps maybe the whole thing. I don't think I've ever done the whole thing though, but certainly certain aspects, especially maps, and incorporate them into your game, because you don't have the time to develop everything all the time, and also there's not an original thought in the whole universe, and there's some really cool ideas in some of those modules that you might want to pick up and put into your adventure or whatever. So
make it fit, Halakar. Thariston commands you.
It doesn't fit is a kind of a hard one for me. I mean, your world is completely up to you. Unless it's I have this really cool campaign adventure that takes place in ancient China, but we're clearly in Finland. It does.
It has to fit.
With that particular module, it depends whether you want to sort of give a bit of a Lovecraftian vibe to your D&D. That module does have a certain vibe.
Yeah.
So I can understand it with that one, as I could understand it with modules such as maybe Dungeon Land and Beyond the Magic Mirror, which are very, very whimsical. If your world is a very magical place, they would fit. But if the whimsical doesn't fit so well, then
you're not going to end up in those modules if you're in a Conan style world. It's just exactly. It wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. It would just suck.
Right, I'm just going to go and make myself a drink because I'm absolutely gagging for a drink. And with a view of keeping 6 people in the conversation, as I'm going to be away for a few minutes, I'm going to bring in Omanal now.
I need to step away real quick myself.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to stay here.
Omanal scared everybody away.
Has nothing to do with Omanel. I have to go to the bathroom. There, I said it. I'll be back.
Oh, look, it's Omanal. I think I have to go too.
Oh my dog's on fire. I have to run.
It's me.
Oh no, your reputation precedes
I
you,
will
buddy.
ruin. I will bring everything. No, it's
We all appreciate Omanal. Even more so when he's doing the Inspector Gadget thing. Where's your fan?
oh
Yeah.
sorry, I'm in a different room.
Oh
you
no.
know. Ever since I was doing too much manual labor. No, I mean, we're talking about everything. It's like, when I hear about the story, it's like, yeah, I'd love to have a story, but I don't want it to be centered around the characters per se. I want it centered around the events, and then you can bring different people in or out. Like everyone's talking about Lord of the Rings. Well, when did Theoden come in? When did Theodred? When did when did Faramir come in? It's like, oh, okay, you can have these other areas going on at the same time while you're having the big war. You don't have to just follow the hobbits everywhere.
Oh dear God. I would
and I
never
think
do
that's
that to
part
my
of it,
players,
is,
brother.
What's that, Bear?
I would never do that to my players. If we're going to take the time to be in the War of the Ring, you better be the focus of the War of the Ring. Everyone always says that. They say, well, you can run a third age game where they're running around doing other stuff to help the war. It's like, yay, I'm doing the side quest of the ring. Like,
Sure, why not?
Well,
So
no-
long as the players are
no,
engaged at the
not for
table.
me, man. You guys like it, fill your boots. But for me, no.
Well, I don't want to force the players into it. If the players want to take the mantle, that's up to them, is what it really comes down to.
Someone
It's
once
the
told me
kind
they
of thing
ran a
of,
Star Wars game where the players wound up being the characters as opposed to Luke and Han and Leia, and they said it was a fun time. So who knows?
yeah, no, I agree with that too. Is I don't want to follow the exact thing. It's like, oh, okay, you didn't do this. No, you just like anything else. Is any game should be focused around the players. The players are the central focus of the entire game. They don't have to be the complete movers and shakers in the world, but the game still has to revolve around them. And I think that's the problem I had sometimes with DMs. We talk about what makes a good DM. We also have to mention what makes a bad DM. Is where they're more interested in their story and sidelining the characters for their NPCs. And I said, no, that should never happen.
Yeah.
So I don't care. I don't care if you have, Gandalf and no. When we're playing, you are the most important thing in our game. Yes, there can be other things going on, but you are you are what we want. And if you guys don't want to, screw with the ring, fantastic. You want to go in Mordor and go screw with the Easterlings or the Hadarim, or you want to go up north and see where the cold drakes are while the war is going on, that's fine. I'm okay with that. You can come back and say, oh, look, the other stuff. Because I want the players to feel like, okay, we're in this. What are we going to be? What's important for us? And if I don't have any problems killing off those. Okay, the hobbits die. Guess what? You find a magic ring. What are you going to do with it now? Well, now we're going to take it to Mordor. Okay, that's a whole different thing. But I don't want them to feel forced. They have to follow the trek of the books.
Yeah, no, there's merit in that, but this is one of the dangers of playing in a non-role playing world, right? Like playing in a world that was designed to tell stories of a specific type. You're going to run into certain problems or hiccups that you're going to have to deal with as you go along, right? Like I would never run a Babylon 5 universe game unless I was replacing the main Babylon 5 characters with the PCs, because like Dune, Babylon 5 was designed to tell one story, whereas Doctor Who tell all the stories you want in the Doctor Who universe, right?
And I would also probably do it before.
Hang on.
Or
I want to disagree. I want to hear it.
No, there's a fair amount of side story stuff you can do in most of those pre-done settings. Even in Dune, there's lots of stuff going on in the background and on the sides. So you may not be involved with the main plot. Like a friend of mine ran this great campaign where he for Star Wars, not for Dune, but for Star Wars, where all of his players were the many Bothans who died.
Wait, no, Star Wars is weird. Star Wars was designed to tell a story, but it's one of the most open settings you could have, right?
It's
But
a
I
giant
feel like
sandbox, yeah.
I feel like Dune can be too. But Dune, because there's a lot of. If you delve into the lore, there's so much going on out there, and all you have to do, you don't have to be involved with the main story. But I get what you're saying. I mean, I would like with John's Lord of the Rings campaign. It's set at a different age. The MERP game is even set ostensibly at a different age than the books. But Babylon 5, you're right though. They don't give you much at all to deal for the rest of the universe.
And I think sometimes it's better to do stuff before or after. Your main event. It's like, oh, okay. It's if you start 10 years before or you start 5 years after, that to me is a good place. The players are familiar with it. They may know the characters, but they may not know what happened after, or they can feel like, oh, things are building up.
One of those previous Babylon stations.
Otherwise, it becomes kind of like a historical fiction game where everybody who's a player sort of knows in their mind that certain events are going to happen at certain times sooner or later along the timeline. And that can also be interesting, but it can also be kind of it can also present certain problems that you have to deal with, I guess.
I step away.
There's a hole in your mind.
I step away for 5 minutes.
We talked about something you don't like. Oh,
5 minutes. I look at chat and
it's all sci-fi.
Wiggling a sausage at you.
It's all
Firefly
sci-fi
setting, guys. The Firefly setting.
I looked at chat and saw people were mentioning B5. I thought, oh, well, they're discussing Horror on the Hill.
And we were discussing Lord of the Rings, and Bear brought up Babylon 5.
All I said was running a campaign in a story universe that has a specific story to tell, and the writer is J. Michael Straczynski level autism of everything is linked together is difficult and something I choose not to do. Yeah. As much as I love the world of the Belgariad, Fantasy John, I would never run a campaign set in the Belgariad because it was designed to tell the one story that it tells.
I'm going to mention one other thing which John did for us, which was when we were playing Call of Cthulhu Realms of Terror. We knew what we were playing for the adventure. It was up to us to do our, Scout's honor, not to do, to go find what the module was and read it all before, so we could short circuit the stuff. And as railroady effectively as Call of Cthulhu modules need to be, John still had to bring us back. He had to bring us back and rail us in just because you're like, where do we go from here? Because we missed whatever clue or where we should have gone here, or we did something, different. And like, oh, okay. And I think some of it also comes down to be nice to your DMs as well. If they give you a hook, don't be a jerk and just try going somewhere else just because,
Bilbo has to leave the Shire.
Yeah.
Is what I always call that one. Sure, you always have to play. Why would my character do that? Because you're fucking playing a game. Remember, it's a game. At the end of the day, it's a game. It's not like you're going to sit there. Let's play Monopoly. Well, you have to roll the dice. Why? Yeah.
There were quite a lot of people. There were quite a lot of people tonight in the chat and on the stream who played in my Call of Cthulhu game last night. And even though I've already said that Horror on the Orient Express, it is quite a linear general storyline, more than half of last night's session was spent me improvising to try and work out what the hell would happen when the players attempted something that is not mentioned in that book at all. It's not mentioned. In fact,
the storytelling just takes it in a whole different direction. If anything, absolutely. It prolongs the narrative of the how narrow the actual book tells you to go.
Yeah. I mean,
it's where the fun comes out of it. I mean, just be as a GM, write it.
We couldn't find our friend John. That was the problem. So we were trying to find out what happened to the professor.
And according to that, you'll get a clue 3 days after he disappears.
Yeah, and I think it was Eldorian who was saying, "Let's just go to the office. Let's just go to the office. Let's just go to the office." And I think that's what we had to do in the end, wasn't it? I can't remember now.
I just bluffed it all. Made up as I went along. Of course I did.
Well, I'm going to mention something else while we're talking about railroads. And to me, the railroad is no matter what choice you make, it's always going to be the same. And that's part of the reasons I think that dungeons existed it was to limit players' options initially, to really, and I think that's why X1 Isle of Dread came out after some of the other stuff was so the players, so the DM could get an understanding, so now he could run the hex crawl kind of things. But the other part is, look, if the characters get on a boat, they're not going to be the captain. The captain's going to decide where they go. And it's like, oh, okay, you're going to follow where you're going to go in certain cases, whether it's a carriage or something like that. Is okay. You have now. It's just like getting on a plane. Unless you can go hijack the plane's going to go wherever.
Do I have a gun?
Yeah.
If I have a gun,
your
the boat may
players-
be going exactly where I want the boat to go.
I was just going
In
to
the
say,
1930s, though, the ship's crew also have guns.
Fair,
I
but
was
they're
just going to
easily
say,
paid off. Do we have a rich PC in the group?
Now, but if it's a fantasy game, you sure as hell can bet that the party's going to mutiny on the ship and try and take it over.
I was going to say, I think in at least 80 to 90% of the adventures where I ever put any of my player characters on a ship anywhere, they ended up owning that damn ship after a certain period of time. So
I used random aquatic encounters once on my players in D&D way back in the day. They never wanted to go on a ship again. They were like, no, that's way more dangerous out there than on the land. We'll walk.
Salvaging
my
giant
players will
squids?
never.
What? Yeah, I think I'll stay on terra firma.
My players will never stop to investigate a boat they find out in the middle of the ocean anymore. Ever. Like the ship is signaling to nope, keep going.
Yeah.
Nope.
See, Bear, I did that kind of stuff too, and then I ended up with a bunch of traumatized players that were unable to make any kind of decisions. It was like, wait, do we go over the bridge? No, we don't go over the bridge. Wait, do we get on the boat? No, we don't go to the boat. Do we fight the orcs? Oh, no, not the orcs, not the orcs.
And I think sometimes, there's that aspect. And then the other part is, I don't know, this is, taking from another system for like Blades in the Dark. Sometimes I think this is where by having that metagame clock and you just start ticking it down, players don't know what's going to happen when it goes, but at least they feel that they have to do something or something bad's going to happen. And I think that's actually why the old modules had the random encounters. It was to encourage players to move. Mm-hmm. You can't just sit there the entire time and say, well,
have any of you played any index card RPG?
No.
Boo.
It's good. It's a good game.
No, it's not.
It's good fun. It's great for conventions.
Well, I don't go to conventions, so I guess I'll never know.
I played it at a convention and I thoroughly enjoyed it because it worked really, really well for the 3 or 4 hour time slot where they've got that. There is that ticking clock aspect where you cycle through, everybody has their moment in the spotlight, and then the clock ticks and moves on, and so on, and that's how it works.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I mean, running a campaign with it would be very difficult, but in terms of a convention game, it's great.
Now, in a campaign, you can still do doom clocks. You just do it narratively. If the current campaign arc is stop the evil cult, well, and I ran this, and we had an Orcus cult that started out with the party investigating a missing farm girl, stopping a sacrifice, and then slowly but surely finding out that people in town are talking about, have you seen Farmer Jenkins and his and his family lately? No, they usually come to town once every couple of weeks. They haven't been to town, and so they go out and start investigating on the edges of the farmlands. A bunch of these farmsteads are just ransacked, and then it just escalated. So you can still have that doom clock going narratively. Flocks of foul birds are flying into the territory. The wolves are much more ravenous and bold than they've ever been before. The crops are failing. Whatever the case is with your story, you can definitely doom clock your players, even without actually having to have a physical an actual counter or anything. Although that also helps, just like putting out a little D20 and you've got Once it hits 1, you're dead.
Well, exactly. It's you want something to push, and sometimes.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I just want to say something really fast because I know we're running out of time here, and we're going to eventually wrap this up. Thank you, Omanel. It's my favorite part of Omanel on any stream. I have watched.
He's got a permanent blink spell
metric-
cast on him.
Seriously, random. I have watched a metric shit ton of talking GMs on YouTube over the years, and I say this without any hint of hubris or ass kissing. This lineup, I mean, Joker doesn't GM, but still, he's a great guy. But this lineup is some of the best advice, conversation, and differing opinions on how things work I have ever seen. Well done, John. Hell of a panel today. Cheers.
And when the doom clock strikes 0, you'll all turn into chickens or Krampus elves.
Well, but
I will
I mean, but that's why, like I know with John when we did Forget Me Not, there is a clock that's running somewhere in there. You know, you have a certain time frame, and I think that's part. The other part is, you know, as a GM, if you can get a player, you know, talking about good things, to move things along, or one that's willing to do something that will move the story along. Now, when I say story, I just mean that players have a tendency to discuss for hours on something that should take 3 minutes. You know, just get someone to go, I'm just going to pull the lever. Let's see what happens. Just, you know, while everyone's arguing whether they should pull the lever or not, it's like, all right.
Now based on Omanel's complete dismissal of what I said, I take back what I said about us being awesome only in relation to Omanel. Everybody else is great. Omanel, little bitch.
Actually, I don't mind them spending hours discussing. In our MERP game, we pretty much had 3 sessions where they were planning, trying to work out who they were going to ally with, dealing with NPCs, more planning. And you know what I did?
Being
Sheep,
shepherds, yes.
And you know what I did? I had a cup of tea and I sat back and I listened and I thought, this is great. They're engaging with the game.
Hell, in my campaign, my players did all this work to get on the quest, and then ended up going on the thing that they did. And I'm like, all right, you spent all that money on hirelings and mercenaries and all this other stuff, and you're not using any of it now. So you just let it go.
In my Kingsgate game, they left the town once to start the adventure. They went back to town to regroup, and then spent 6 sessions fucking around in town talking about how they should really get on the quest, but really not wanting to get on the quest. So I eventually just brought the fucking adventure to them by having an invading force arrive and take over the town, because it's like they weren't leaving. They were like, we're really safe here. It was like, okay, fuck.
And now we're playing a city.
As long as they're engaged at the table, it's all good.
I remember one time my player characters, well, it wasn't my player characters, I was actually a player in the dungeon, but they spent 4 sessions trying to decide what to do with a giant spider carapace that they had gotten, whether they were going to make a boat out of it or armor or something like that. And the only thing that was annoying was that my next character was waiting to come into the dungeon, so they probably did it just for me, I don't know. Just to keep me out for another session.
Well, I remember sitting there and, you know, when we had one GM, and the rest of the party's all coming up with ideas, what could happen, who's doing this. And I know he was taking notes, you know, well, maybe I'll do this. And that's the other part. Let the players do some of the work for you. It's like, oh, you know, that's a much better idea. I'll use that. And then they can feel like they're really smart by saying, oh, I figured it out. Well, you sort of figured it out because you gave me the idea.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I mean,
you use their ideas in the game.
Yeah, I had the ultimate party split in my current game. Before they went on the last big push towards the finale that should be happening soon, every member of the party went in a different direction across the setting because I was really happy because they all got together and they like really dialed in like all the people they had met in the campaign. They're like, well, we could go to the queen of such and such and see if she can lend men or and arms to our cause. And one person's like, I'm gonna go talk to my Slayer friends and see if they have any dragon slaying weapons. And another guy's like, I'm gonna go talk to the old wizard in the woods, see if he has anything. My wife's character, she's like, I'm gonna go talk to the giants and that we made friends with and see if they'll help us out. And they're like I eventually had to like just have them do some die rolls because I wasn't gonna role play at all. because that would just taken forever. But that was kind of cool. They had like called back to the game, and yes, it was a big diversion, and it was like, but I felt really happy that they were just pulling in these resources that they had kind of found throughout the rest of the campaign.
Last night's Call of Cthulhu Adventure, all it says in there is somebody was seen running away from the scene of the blaze who looked like the manservant. That's the only line that there isn't there about it. So, and they were discussing, the player party were discussing this. So this, the fact that they were like, oh, well, who saw them running away? Maybe it was some urchins on the street. And they were, so yeah, I was there thinking, yeah, it could have been urchins on the street. How am I going to present urchins on the street? Yeah, I'll do it this way. And it just created a few characters for them. That's it. You let players lead you in that way.
And I need to take that kind of lesson from you because I'm very bad at being a minimalist GM. So that's
I gotta
one
go.
of the things I need to learn.
All right.
Cheers, Eli.
Letter folks.
Cheers.
Bye, Eli.
Bye, Eli.
It's just confidence with the material. What helps me do it is playing in a world I know. That's key. And what I like about that is it's set in 1920s London. Okay, I didn't live in 1920s London, but I know a bit about 1920s London. London is, I hate to admit, familiar to me. I hate the place, but it is familiar. It's familiar, and that allowed me to improvise. And then listening to you players discuss various things, I was like, oh yeah, that could happen. Oh yeah, well that could happen as well. Oh yeah, that could happen.
Well, I think the one advantage that Call of Cthulhu has is that because a lot of it's historic and it's set further back, players can research. Like we're playing Realms of Terror. I'm like, well, let me go look at what's actually going on during this time frame. And
This is a problem with sci-fi too, because if you're playing in a futuristic world, it's kind of hard. It's like, if you're going to invent a new prime color, what would it look like? It's kind of hard sometimes to think about how the future would be. Whereas if you have a historical setting that players can go to, or if you have something like Lord of the Rings where players can research it, then it's really cool and everybody's on the same page. And that's nice.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why my brain doesn't really gel with sci-fi. Because I struggle to run a game in an overly fantastical or alien world.
It's not much different though. Like, I mean, if you have magic, if you have like a high magic world, but I know you don't like that really either. So,
No,
but if you had a high magic world, then you just sort of replace the magic with technology in a sense. But it just depends on. There's a scale there too, with a lot of different degrees.
I think
we had a big stream a few months back about trying to persuade me to enjoy sci-fi. If anyone wants to check that out.
Well, I think this is the advantage of like when Bear's running Star Trek. People are familiar enough, and if they're not, they can go research it. Same thing with Flash Gordon, Babylon 5, Dune. The players can go and look this stuff up. There's wiki pages. There's all sorts of stuff about that. Some of the other stuff, when it's just coming out of left field, no one really knows, and that makes it a lot harder. And I think that's part of it. And as a DM, it's like, well, what do you like? Also, that's the other part. Play games you like. If you aren't enjoying it, it's better just to simply say, "Hey guys, would anyone else like to run this game? I'm burned out," or something like that. Because if you're not having fun, the players are going to notice that too.
Slan, I did, but it's more horror than what we'd see as sci-fi nowadays. That's the reason, I think.
I think also.
I think you'll jump in. Sorry, I was going to say, I think you'll jump into any sci-fi if the story's compelling. That's why we're trying to push you on Firefly. Firefly is interesting with good characters. You'd probably eat it right up.
Yeah, I think John would like Traveler too. In the right Traveler setting. Of course, that's a giant sandbox. So when you say Traveler, it could be anything.
I don't understand this madness.
What madness?
John liking sci-fi.
Well,
Rivers run uphill now? What?
Like I said, the one that blends both of them is kind of Warehouse 13.
No, I think some of
Well,
it is that well, and I don't blame John for having sci-fi. If you look at it, the stuff that we saw from the 1980s is quite different than what you're starting to see now.
Yeah, I prefer the stuff from the 80s. You're right.
Yeah, because I much prefer the. And to be fair, I like the pulp heroic action, Flash Gordon style stuff. I'm getting tired of all the dystopian, futuristic settings of the shadow punk.
Come on, Bear. You know you want to do it. Brian Blessed and Flash Gordon.
No.
Oh,
I
don't
no
think-
longer am your dancing bear, gentlemen. You must pay for play. I am a thespian mercenary.
he has to come
By
up
the way,
with
Tron, you can join us.
That's
The
right.
dues are cheap. Thespian mercenaries pay for play.
But like I said, it's that's why I don't like anything that goes really far out, because then you start having to justify things, and I think this is why Star Trek doesn't gel with me. If you can create anything, then why do you have any trade? It removes a lot.
So
of stuff
you understand the difference between storytelling and pedantry, right? Like, I'm just checking, because that's the thing that gets up my arse about anybody talking about Star Trek, Star Wars, anything at all. It's a story. It's not a scientific treatise, and they're wanting to tell a story with some cool stuff. And if you start going, well, you should be able to do this, you should be able to do that. Okay, but that's not the story they're telling. They're not telling you the utopian tech society story, because that's a boring fucking story. Isaac Asimov already did it. It was not a great fucking film. Great books, but doesn't translate to a visual medium very well. Same thing for fantasy. Nothing drives me up the wall more than people go, well, actually in real medieval times, oh my God, Jesus, stop. People didn't go boogada 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 and shoot fireballs out of their fingers. Enough, There's a level of pedantry that we need to just dial back a little bit and dial into the escapism a little bit more.
Well, but no, I mean, but different settings for different people. That's my whole point on this. Is it's, and I'm not.
So what's the sci-fi setting that works for you, where all the science makes perfect sense?
I didn't say it makes all perfect sense. I said I'd like to. Hey, I like Traveler 2300. That makes more sense to me than the other stuff. But
I remember that. I liked that one too.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, that was like D20 system, wasn't it? Like Twilight.
No. It was Game Designers Workshop, GDW. Was their own.
Yeah, I know, but it didn't work on the same engine as like
no.
It was Twilight 2000.
I even have it, but I never got anybody to play it. So
it's ages before the D20 system was even a sparkle in what's his name's eye.
But wasn't Twilight 2000 using that?
Well, Twilight 2000 was what happened in 2000, and 2300 was 300 years after.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But
it was its own engine. It wasn't a D&D port or anything.
No, it was.
What kind of a system was that? Was it like a D100?
I haven't played in 30 years, bro. I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah,
it's. I even have it, but I don't remember either. I never got anybody who wanted to play it, so that was the problem I had.
The 2300 I'm looking at is really coming from the Mongoose stuff that they've been releasing recently in the last few years.
Okay.
Now I understand that where the history comes about from it, but part of it is because it reminds me of Firefly in one aspect. It's a more narrow focus, because like the normal travel universe is thousands and thousands of worlds, which means players can be anywhere in there, which is great for the travelers. You could have 1,000
You just
groups.
Like it because it has cowboy hats in it. Don't tell me.
Well, I like it because there's only a certain number of worlds, and it keeps it fairly contained while still being, while still bringing out issues. And I think this is the thing I love about sci-fi, is it allows us to explore. How do I want to put this? It allows us to explore questionable viewpoints. What I mean by questionable viewpoints is, well, what would happen if X? And to be fair, Star Trek did this a lot. What would happen with this, or where do we take this to this conclusion, or what's an extreme and how would this work out? I think that there's some of that aspect, but I like it having narrowed enough for how it's tailored. Of okay, well, what would people do in this situation in the future if we had this kind of world? Which you can do some with fantasy, but I'm much more of a low fantasy person myself, very similar to how John is. And that's what comes into it. I know some people really want the super high fantasy, and part of me would love to do it, but part of me doesn't. And I know that Bears, is bringing out his heroic system. That's great, but I know superheroes with superpowers it isn't for me. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it isn't for me.
Just give me a big blue box and I'll be fine.
So I've got a question for you guys that's been burning the whole night. I'm just wondering, like, what do you guys prefer to do in terms of die rolling? Do you do all open rolls on the table, or do you like to do hidden rolls for certain rolls, or do you do all hidden rolls for the GM? I'm curious about how you guys handle that and what your views are on that.
Mostly open. I only hide rolls where players shouldn't know the result, like reaction adjustments. If they're doing the charisma checks, evil characters, for example, they're not going to be forthright. So I don't want the player to know whether the reaction was positive or negative. They only see how I'm portraying it. Things like that will be hidden. But for everything else, I do it out in the open.
Okay.
Same. I do behind the screen, wandering monster checks.
Yeah.
Reaction rolls if they're really meaningful. Out in the open, you've got all your combat rolls. Listen at doors and find traps and things like that as well can be done behind the screen as well.
Yeah. Anything where the players shouldn't know the die roll, they should only know what you're describing.
Yes.
I like behind the screen only because I have all the other stuff behind there, and I don't have to reach over the screen and roll in front of everyone. But
combat,
DM standing up.
Well, I am standing up, but I still have to lean over the table to,
I love it. I love rolling combat in front because then the players know straight up I'm not fudging anything, and we all get to experience the result together. Especially if it's tense, guy's down to his last hit points, and that attack is coming in, and there's a chance he's dead. That's
absolutely
very interesting to watch.
But am I really trying to hide the die rolls? The answer is no, unless there's something that the players should know.
So I'll make an admission here. I use mostly hidden die rolls, and the reason I do it is because I have some players that have such bad luck that sometimes I actually fudge things in their favor to keep them alive. I tend to do this at lower levels if I'm playing like an AD&D kind of setting where they are really interested in characters, character interaction, character development, and not so much, like if it's an OSE sort of setting or melee, because like in OSE, if you're playing Melee the Fantasy Trip, rules is read, you're going to end up going through a bunch of characters really fast. So I was just curious as to, to hear what you guys think about that. I have one player, actually there's a player in two different groups of mine, one in which I'm playing and one in which I'm GMing. They have the worst luck. They have very skilled characters, but you just know they're going to choke every time they pick up the dice. They just always, like, if you went according to the character sheet, these guys would be the rippers in the party, right? But when they step up, they roll the dice and they drop their weapon, they break their weapon, they miss completely, whatever the worst possible outcome can be, they min out on damage. It can sometimes be exasperating. I'm not sure. I've even gone through and checked the parameters on some of the things because we use Roll20 sometimes. So I've checked the parameters to see if somebody put something in there or
if you've ever
there was a bug or something.
Experienced bad luck. General Nuts playing a ranger in our MERP game. I can't remember him successfully making a track check yet, and he's got a massive bonus on tracking.
My leadership role was great in that game too.
Your leadership role was absolutely stunning. I'll come to that in a moment. But Maynard, for example, didn't land a single blow in combat for the first year or so we were running that game. Everything missed. Missed. And your leadership check, where you ended up with a roll of about minus 240 because of the way the exploding dice were.
It was stellar.
So I mean, I'm going to mention, like John was talking about, as we've gotten older, I've noticed that a lot of us don't, even if we roll, we don't even have to roll in the open. Like if I want to roll my dice and John doesn't see them, you can hear the dice being rolled, and I just call something out.
Yeah.
There's enough trust, and I think amongst all of us that we're going through it. And but that said, is sometimes I want everyone to see the rolls. Because the example was when we did the fight using your Realm of Terror, those critical successes or those critical failures were actually more entertaining when everyone was waiting to see what they were.
Yes, the
Yeah.
cheering and laughing that happens when people see the dice land in a certain way is something you do want to foster at the table.
And Grumpy Old Slan was right there. He used his like 20 percentile and rolled a 7, and then I rolled like a 3 or 4. Did critical hit, and then of course my critical failure where I rolled 100 and fell asleep. In the middle.
You collapsed exhausted, but that saved your life.
Yes.
You weren't there when it all went down because you collapsed exhausted.
But to be fair, I got a critical roll on him again when we were at the end, where of course I got my head chopped off. But that was after I killed him. But there's times that you want that because you're going to succeed or fail. It's everything rolls on it. But most of the time, most of the rolls don't matter that much, so it doesn't need to be in the open. And Manfred, I know that some people say, "Oh no, you don't do this." I don't have any problems fudging the rolls as long as there are consequences for bad choices. That's all I care about. Is if you're going to do a bad choice, yes, you're going to get screwed. But sometimes it's like, look, it's going to be anticlimactic if you're just going to die here. And I know, I know everyone says, well, let the dice roll. But sometimes it's just anticlimactic. It's like, well, is this fun for me? Is it fun for the players? No, but I'd be more likely to do this much. I'll knock you out. And the more I read all the Pulp Fiction stuff, I'm probably more lenient now. If you're going to get knocked out, you're going to get captured. Now what are you going to do? Now, if you jump into lava, I don't need to roll your dice. You're dead.
Yeah. And I mean, there's something to be said. Like I will certainly let a character die heroically, if there's a good option, because players usually feel good about that.
Yeah.
And I don't like to bring characters back just for the sake of the story if I can avoid it. Sometimes you're playing a story-oriented thing, and that character is key to the plot or to the story. And I think Bear's right. You should try to avoid that if possible. But sometimes the players want to play something like that, and you're kind of stuck with it then. So
everyone needs their Boromir character to die. At some point, it doesn't make
Boromir was done dirty.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look, that's what needs to happen. And the other part is that but if players know that there is the real threat of death, that to me is important.
Oh, yeah.
The other part
death should always be on the table in my games.
That's why I have two
Not just
characters
death, but
now.
failure.
Yes.
Sure.
Failure needs to be on the table.
Well, I mean, even if it's like, okay, if you're low levels, hey, guess what? I don't mind having you captured. I don't mind you doing certain things, but guess what? You have setbacks. It's going to be a setback.
Mhm.
Oh, all of a sudden I had my plus weapons. Well, you don't anymore. Now what do you do?
Mhm.
And
Hey, guess what you are now? What? A zombie. What do you mean I'm a zombie? They took me to the temple to be revived. Yes. It was the Church of the Undead. Discount revival, but now you're a fucking zombie.
Yeah, one of the paradoxes that I've found playing with younger players too is that a lot of them, they're very against having character death in their games, but they also don't like having hidden roles, and I find that sometimes quite difficult to navigate with them. But that's the kind of thing you can do. Yeah,
This is why I do player-facing roles, and I don't roll shit. Much happier.
But as a DM, I like to roll. I want to roll my map
all their fate. I have nothing to do with it other than creating the situation. Their shitty rolls are their shitty rolls, sir.
And you know what? Every group is different. Some groups want everything out in the open. Some of them kind of like the hidden aspect to it. And at the end of the day, I want something that has an adventure. I want something that I don't want it to where it's super easy, where everything dies and they feel anticlimactic. I had that happen one time in a game with all player-facing roles, and the villain rolled a complete critical failure, which allowed my character to grapple him and kill him. And I felt, you know what? I felt kind of cheated, because of that. And so,
it can be anticlimactic. Yeah, I mean, you want to have a big fight for the players so that they feel like but sometimes they like that. Sometimes they like to just KO the big bad guy.
Never run Dark Conspiracy. I did have the book for it, but that's all I can say.
I heard great things about it, but I never ran it.
I've never heard of it.
Dark Conspiracy was another games designer workshop. It
GDW,
was-
yeah, another GDW game.
Oh, really?
Good
Okay.
box set, from what I hear. I heard the box set was beautiful.
I
I know nothing
had
about it.
the book and a couple of other things, and I can barely even remember what it was. It was kind of like the X-Files meets Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, it was X-Files, Undead, Zombie Apocalypse, or something. I don't know. I heard good things.
Yeah, sorry, Mac, never played it.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
but-
Mac.
like everything else. Is the players may want the hey, just like you're talking about. I had one GM who threw in an extra monster, and you know what? I was and he told me after the fact he threw in the extra monster. I'm like, I was happy with it because we killed off the main monster first. If you hadn't brought in the second one, it would have made it again anticlimactic. I want that. I want to feel that big build up and that we actually overcame something.
He
fell
popped
over
out. It
and
was an
died.
anticlimax.
He overcame himself there for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I get where you're coming from with that, and I often do that as well. Either take a couple monsters off or put a couple monsters on as is needed. So,
or at least give them a chance to escape. Even if more monsters come in, we've all seen this. Like I said, I like pulp. Oh, look, more monsters coming up after you defeated the villain. You're all gonna have to run out and jump out the window at the last minute. Into the
My
mountains
approach
or
there tends to be if the party have been careful but unlucky, then I'll give them a slightly more glaring chance to escape generally. But if they've been rash, then
I think stupid actions deserve their consequences, absolutely, and I think that's what you have to feel the consequences for it. It's just like I know when you guys were talking earlier, I always say, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Or "This will happen if what you do it," and they're like, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway." Okay, roll. But they've accepted that. I don't assume that maybe I'm like, I know Eli talked about this. Maybe I missed something. Maybe they're I've had so many arguments when I was a kid about misunderstandings, and as I get older, I'm like, okay, how can we just avoid some of that? And some of it's just like, you know what, one with the plot. It's more fun if we just do it that way. I can spend an hour arguing, or I can spend an hour gaming. I'd rather spend the hour gaming.
Some people
one
would
of
rather
my-
spend the hour arguing, sadly. But something I noticed about 10, 15 years ago, my circle of friends, the people who still like to have arguments with people, none of us hang out with anymore. We're all at that age where it's like, you know what, if we can't have a civil discussion, go away.
One about the whole "Are you?" Go back to the whole "Are you sure?" thing. One little thing that happened when I was running the Lost City. One of my players, he started off playing a wizard. Wizard got killed. Started playing so brought in a first level bard. Wasn't really feeling the bard all that much. Says, "Oh, can I play maybe a cleric?" Okay, you've got to come in at first level. The rest of the party were like about third or fourth level at this point. I thought, yeah, he'll catch up because that's the nature of how it works. And I think it was the first session he was playing this new cleric. He worked shifts. He worked odd shifts, and often by 10:30, 11 o'clock, we'd be playing online. We'd be calling down the microphone. "You awake, Jordan? You still awake? You still awake? You awake?" He'd be like, "Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm getting a bit tired." And I rolled a random encounter, a black pudding. The rest of the party were like, "Nope, nope." And I heard from Jordan's microphone, "Did I hear somebody say roll initiative?" And no, we're running away. And this zombified voice just went, I run in and hit it, whatever it is, I don't know, with my hammer. And I was like, "Are you awake, Jordan? Are you sure?" Yeah. That character lasted one round.
I'll run in and eat my pudding.
And the rest of his party was saying, we're giving him the "Are you sure? Are you sure?" "No, Jordan, no." And he was just like, he was half asleep. He was up.
Yeah. Of course, you could have probably just let his character live, and he wouldn't have remembered anyway. So
It's all a dream.
That's right.
Guys had the weirdest dream. The pudding was eating me instead of me eating
here's
it.
the other thing, though, and I'm going to mention this. I don't like resurrections in many cases because to me it cheapens a lot of character deaths. Now, it's one thing if they go through certain
procedure,
parts.
yeah.
But if it's just all the time, you died, you just come back, raise the dead. We'll wait a week or two for you to recover. I hate it. I just hate it. It trivializes whatever moment they had for death, and it removes a lot of the consequences from that. Which is why I've also joked that if you look at Dungeons and Dragons, raise dead's a 5th level spell, but regeneration is 7th. So if you start removing limbs, it actually has a bigger impact.
Well, that's a thing too that you guys touched on before, and I can understand if a player wants to continue playing their character, and you're going to, they have the money and they bring him back. I think it also makes sense to have them, either lose a few attribute points or lose some experience or something like that. But there's a question too about whether you really want to do that or not, and whether I think at one point in time we had a player character who had lost his left arm and his right leg, and at some point in time, it was like, it's just like in his right eye, and it's like, do you really want to continue this? It's just like,
so he got a peg leg, a hook, and a parrot, with the eye patch.
We had one guy who lost both
Yar,
his
time for a
arms.
pirate campaign.
Yeah.
I had one player that he would play his character no matter how badly crippled he got, and he ended up having a character that lost 2 arms, and so he decided that this character was going to become a monk and learn how to fight with his feet. And I kind of went with that for a while, but then after a while I was like, okay, well, you go to the monastery to enter your training, and it was like every time he would ask me, well, am I done with my training yet? I was like, no, you're still learning.
Thank you, Hungar. You are a star as always. If you've just turned green as a result of Hungar, then be sure to give him a thank you. I can't see who got the greenery for this because I'm in StreamYard and it doesn't show me. So whoever got green.
Barney Fraggles, Jay Greenlearn, N. Noxty, Mark McKinley, Florian Hubner, and that's it. Those 5.
Very good.
The only name I know there is Barney Fraggles, who's been in. He has made comments in some on some live streams.
But I think this is one of the things with Warhammer, where we get the accumulation of wounds. Even if you don't die, you get more and more scars. And that's the other part too. Is I think sometimes just by having the scars, it teaches it teaches the player that there's a consequence, but it also gives them a story. Well, how did you get that scar across your face? Oh, well, I almost got hit by the battle axe with the Minotaur, and I was not.
So you're talking Warhammer Fantasy, right?
Well, I'm talking about anything. Again, if you're talking D&D, if you don't want to kill off the characters, you can still give them a nasty scar. And
if you're playing Warhammer, you start to look like the sketches in the Warhammer artwork then after a while, which I really like.
And it also gives the players something to talk about with their character. It gives I got this in this battle. Oh, I got it in this battle. Like, oh, okay.
I just want to quickly reply to Mac. As far as I know, no, there are not really underground rivers beneath London. The whole thing about walking sewers is very much a fantasy trope. And as far as I know, most of the medieval world didn't exist. It just didn't exist. I know Rome had a main sewer that people could walk through should they choose to, but there wasn't much of it, and it certainly wasn't a potential adventuring environment size. So
it's mostly based on France, on the sewers of Paris.
Paris,
Were they sewers? I mean, I know there was the catacombs where they had the burial.
Oh no, there was also the Paris sewers that were quite famous.
I don't know. I don't know.
I've been there.
Paris, mon vieux, l'île de Paris, right?
I've been there a million times and never gone into the sewers, so
I don't know that part of Paris, but not as far as I know, London. No.
I can tell you that the city of Mainz, for example, has a big problem, big rat problem, because they have catacombs under the city that are quite extensive, and they even had, of course, Mainz used to be Mogontium, which was the headquarters of the Roman military fleet on the Rhine at the time, and they even dug a tunnel that went underneath the Rhine back in Roman times. And what happened was they used them as bomb shelters in World War II, and some of it got bombed and fell in and left only holes that rats couldn't get into. So going down and digging them out would have cost a lot of money, and they had this problem with rats, and they still have a big problem with rats in mines to this day because of that. And you can still go into some of the catacombs, but not all of them. So,
for this one here, 2 TPKs in a row last session. All of us died to 2 different save or die poison traps. Well, for me, the answer to that is stop triggering those traps.
Well, and part of it to me is for the DM. Do you have to kill off the
Be more
players
better.
for everything? That's the other part.
Yeah, that is true. You can have different poison effects which are more interesting than save or die. That is true. And if everything is save or die, that to me is very lazy DMing. But there is the point that be more better. Yeah. Do you need to open that chest now? Can you not find a way of getting the chest out of the dungeon and maybe paying a 3rd level cleric to cast find traps on it to see if it is trapped? All these options are there to avoid falling for this sort of thing.
But the second part of this brings up an interesting point too. We have to start all over with new level 1s. Most of us were around level 6. Now, this is a good, interesting question too. Do you guys do this where they have to start back at level 1? Because that creates a great disparity. Yes. That creates a great disparity in the party.
Depends on the game. For the disparity, like, you play something like 5th Ed, the disparity is noticeable because the game's designed for everybody to be roughly the same. But you get a 1st level character joining in with a 6th level group in AD&D or OSE, they catch up real fast.
Yeah, but all of them died, so they went all from 6th level. Yeah. I'm going to bring this up, which is,
well, if all of them died, that's no problem. But if like a couple of them die and they have to start over with 1st level characters and everybody else is 6th level,
we were talking earlier about the idea of having folders of characters. That's on the players. That's on the players.
Yeah, I'm going to bring.
So you would let them bring in a higher level character then?
Yeah, well, my group, my AD&D group, for example, they have 2 or 3 characters apiece, and even their backups are leveled. They didn't start that way; they earned it, like they alternated out. And so, if somebody dies, I got my backup.
It's like my characters in OSC. I've got 2 level 2 characters and 2 level 1 characters. If one of my level 2 characters dies, I've still got another level 2 character I could play. I could play either of the level 1s as well. Those options are there.
I'm going to bring this up here, which is, when they're talking about this, is depends on what the DM wants in a certain case. Because do I want to have to send them through 1st level adventures again? Because sometimes those 6th level adventures are more fun for everyone to play.
Well, it can be, yeah.
But I'll tell you this much: is for poison or die traps, I much prefer, very similar to what was it, was it Caverns of Soja? It was one of them where you slowly take damage over time. Yeah, I mean that he's absolutely right there. Grumpy Old Slam's right for that aspect. But the other part for me is I like damage over time when now the players have to run around trying to neutralize the poison before they're all dead.
That was Tomoa Chen, not Sochkanth.
Oh.
I've heard the word such like 30 times today. What's going on with this module? It's like on everybody's brain or something.
It's a really cool module. If it's the one
I'm thinking about. I played it. It wasn't. We died.
It's the one with the vampire,
horrible.
Right? I always get it mixed
up.
Bodak.
It's the one with the Bodak, son. That was what killed us.
I always get it mixed up with the one that has the vampires at the end, and everyone ends up going out naked.
Yeah, that's Sochkanth.
Yeah, it's the same one. I've never made it that far. We died at the Bodak cave.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a module with a lot of potential. It can be a monster menagerie. It can be if a DM can give it some life, it could be great.
It's a good TPK module though too, isn't it?
My God, yes.
Tomb of the Lizard King's another one. You end up like fighting a black dragon in there. I mean, it's a really cool concept module. The idea of having an undead lizard king that comes back.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough, yes.
And I like the idea that this, before the players even start out, when they're there getting hired to do the job, that an assassin comes to take out the local lord. But anyway, yeah.
But I think a lot of it just comes down to, from the dungeon master perspective is, I've heard this and I kind of agree. You're kind of a player too. You want to have fun with your stuff as well, and you don't have to kill off all the characters to make it fun for you to go like, oh no, we gotta go back to hobgoblins and spiders again.
I've done both. I've had both work well, but I've also had situations happen where the players that have had to come in with a lower level character have had a serious problem catching up, or have had a serious problem surviving, and so they end up going through like a string of level 1 characters, like 10 of them before they get one that manages to catch on.
That really depends on the play style. Like if the DM is constantly putting the characters through level appropriate scenarios every time, like they're scaling, then that's going to happen for sure. But I like to play it so the world exists in an average, right? There's a demographic at play. Like 1 in 100 is adventuring class, and that applies everywhere. So the players just travel through the world. The world isn't scaled to them, so it is what it is.
Well,
and
this is kind of a systemic thing then too. Like system plays into a little bit. I've also had the situation happen where players who have started in with a lower level, where I've let players start in with a higher level character, and the other players have complained because they were like, hey, we had to go this whole way, and he gets to start.
He gets a free pass.
Yeah. Like, what the hell is that? So.
Well, I think I would rather them be a few levels behind. So let's say that you're 6th level. Okay, you start off at 3rd. All right, it's enough where you don't get one shot a lot of times.
The gap.
Well, now you are now going to be called Blink Dog.
Oh, that's
your new
I'll
nickname.
put it in there. The Blink
Dog.
Owl.
Blink Owl.
Blink Owl.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, there you go. There's a new monster.
Woo.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of blinking and stuff, we have managed to absolutely destroy the 3 hours tonight. It's been a great discussion. And it has come to the pumpkin hour.
I feel bad now because Sean was going to say more, and I feel like I cut him off.
No, it's okay. It's a style of play not everybody likes. I as far as I'm concerned, you start a new character at level 1, but I play in such a way that it doesn't matter. Okay, so you're the rookie coming in, everybody else is more experienced, but the experienced players aren't throwing the rookie in against the vampire. They're taking care. You have a role. You're still playing, and you level fast.
You can farm characters too. You can go those lower level stuff.
I now remembered why I kept hearing about Lost Cavern of Sokamp today. It's going to be released at some point this year. Is a 5e update by Wizards.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Games Masters was talking about that this morning. That's why.
Another reason I don't do modules though is everybody's read those things.
Well, you know what? It's we've all read those things, but if you actually look at the average person's like, no, that It's like,
okay.
Oh, okay.
And going back to what Sean was saying too, like it's one of the problems I have with D&D because like all of the NPCs, they're supposed to be like 1st level. And so then when
NPCs are supposed to be 0 level.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But then when I'm having my players go around and everything and they're meeting up with these guys, like if they keep growing, at some point in time they are just, they're like so overpoweringly powerful, then why wouldn't they just take over? Why would they just take over the whole town? Like why would they?
Well, that's up to the players. That's up to the players. They're making
Hey, Pumpkinhead, how you doing, Pumpkinhead?
All right, guys.
No, I well, remember 7th level if you go by is what superhero for a fighter.
8th, the 7th is superhero. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people forget about that. They're like, oh no, it's not this. 4th is hero. People are so used to these high level, and you're like, no. If you actually look at the titles, it's much lower. All right, John. If I think we need to go, then we'll,
I'm talking about AD&D modules. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even a D&D GM, so this is why I have to talk about this stuff.
Put your money where your mouth is, Baldy.
I can talk about AD&D modules as much for as long as you want. I mean, I could fill a whole stream next week by myself talking about this. You wouldn't want to hear it.
Next week.
You wouldn't want to hear it.
All right, next week's stream, we're talking nothing but AD&D 1st edition. There we go.
I
get that panel.
Yeah, I mean,
it would be me and Sean dominating, wouldn't it?
Oh, for what? Which one?
AD&D modules. We just absolutely me and Sean would just go blah 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 the whole way through.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's.
I'll be like Crystal Cave.
No, you have to hit him with the the forest of the.
Oh, Forest Oracle.
Forest Oracle. That's
basic.
it. Yeah,
That's
you have to come in and tell about how.
It's AD&D
great
Forest
Forest
Oracle.
Oracle is.
Is it Forest Oracle? Really?
Yeah, it's AD&D.
I'm still gonna run it.
Yes, yeah.
Still
N2.
gonna run it.
I feel
N2,
somewhat
the
I
novice
feel
series.
somewhat disappointed, and some of it's my fault because I can always run the game too. But there's not one in at 8 o'clock on Saturday this morning. 8 o'clock on Saturday. I was like, oh man, we don't have a morning session, or I guess early session. I guess the better phrase.
Is that because Jean's not about this weekend?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so the time has come for me to go to bed because I have to open my shop in about 8 hours from now, and I need to get some sleep. So there you go. Thank you everybody for. Firstly, thank you, chat. It's been absolutely fantastic tonight. We've had up to 60 people in. Yes, there are 4 channels combining the streaming, but to see the numbers tonight consistently hover around 50 and tip up and reach up to 60 is superb. It's by far our biggest combined total, I think, which is wonderful. So thank you, Sean, Bear, and Elfbait, who has I think work is effective with Elfbait, but great stuff. I'd like you guys to share your channels.
We're going to be on in about 50 minutes, 49 minutes on my channel for the 4-Color Cafe. Tonight we're discussing GM goals for 2024. And stop by for that. Could be a good time at Bear the Gen X GM.
Okay. I'll catch up with that tomorrow at work. I tend to have it on in the background while I'm doing my stock stuff on a Thursday.
You miss all my classic faces. Oh, well.
Sean?
I'm Sean with Mage's Musings, and I have videos coming, I promise. And there's a bit of a delay, yeah, but mainly I do my recaps of campaigns, but I've also got some theory videos coming, long overdue. So check me out. Oh yes, and my host is a puppet. The Archmage Melinster Gandaldor.
Joker, Manfred, and Omanal don't have channels. I do need to.
They're not trying hard enough.
And
Sean, since you did the puppet noise, I give you this. Hawkmen die!
That is my favorite line. All these people say Gordon's alive, but no.
Gordon's alive.
No.
So Joker's fairly new to this whole gaming malarkey, but he's dived in very, very much headfirst over the last month or two. So far, you've played a bit of MERP, a bit of OSC, and a bit of Call of Cthulhu.
I've got a book for everyone, yes.
He's still waiting for you to ask him more questions, so that's the thing.
What a trooper, though. He just sat here listening the whole night.
Yeah.
He chimed in.
Trooper.
Yeah,
he chimed in from time to time, but overall, just a trooper.
Yep.
Manfred's fairly new to having his face online, aren't you, Manfred?
Hey, Manfred,
Yeah,
start a goddamn channel already. You have knowledge that you could share with everybody. What?
I feel kind of like an imposter, and I feel so small, so pale.
Yeah, and we all started small,
bright stars.
Imposter syndrome affects us all.
I'm telling you, it runs rampant through our community. Trust me, just do it.
I need a job like John has before I can open a channel. So,
and of course,
maybe it'll happen.
We all know Omanal because we've seen him on everybody's channel. Everybody's, and he does this. As you see, he does this wonderful impression of Inspector Gadget, especially for us.
Yes.
I'll get you next time. Gadget.
A few. I mean, wait,
you gotta pet the cat while you're doing that.
No. Where are your cats tonight? They haven't done anything. It's very unusual.
On the couch.
They're jet black. They've been there the whole time.
They got scared from fireworks or something. They settled down. I remember before Christmas they were going crazy.
No. You just caught them on a dull moment. Trust me.
Okay.
Well, okay, it's not they. It's one. Beans. Misty's like an old man. He was born an old man. He just wants to lounge around all day and eat. Beans, on the other hand, I had to write a tribute to Jolene for him today because of what he was up to.
Yeah, this morning they were like nuts. Well, I guess
whenever he refers to a male cat called Misty, I get confused because I've got a female
missing testicles. Mystical. Misty.
Oh no! Oh no! The truth comes out.
I answered.
My dog's Misty though. She's lovely. My little spaniel. But yeah, thank you. And in chat, we were talking about modules towards the end. I started my channel basically as a means of getting bite-sized, digestible reviews of old modules out there on the internet because there weren't enough of them. There were rambling read-throughs, but very few bite-sized, digestible ones written and read out by people who've actually played them, mostly a number of times. So that's how I started my channel. So if you want to check that sort of stuff out, it's there. We stream every Wednesday, and I do a stream every Friday as well, which is a choose your own adventure stream, fighting fantasy, solo Call of Cthulhu books. That's
What is this week's?
I don't know this week's because we've had 3 weeks of Call of Cthulhu, haven't we? I think I'll go back to fighting fantasy this week. I think I will, but I don't know which book yet. We'll find out. And of course, Of course, I do have a Discord channel. I always forget to put the link in the bump, but in most of my videos, you'll see a link to my Discord channel, and we play games in there. We play Call of Cthulhu, we play OSE, we play MERP, and we played a game of the One Ring the other day.
Go look at this. He has 5 of them up right now.
Yeah.
Sign up.
There's a good array of quality players in there who are willing to come and play games. If you're a DM and you want to run games and you're struggling to find players, there's plenty of people lurking on my Discord who will join in games and try things out, which is good. So,
and later this month, if you want to see John play in a fantasy game, there's going to be a Palladium Fantasy once a month YouTube creators game I'm running, and John's in it. So woohoo!
And slightly oddly,
he's got his medication for that.
Slightly oddly, though, I'm not playing one of the fantasy characters, really.
Oh no! He's playing an actual sci-fi human. Go figure.
Oh, you could have MDC? No, I'm just kidding.
Your face has
Crowbar
MDC now.
Crowbar away in there somewhere.
Anyway, so I've got to shoot off now because I've got to get to bed. So thank you to my panel. Thank you to everyone in chat for making it a really good stream tonight. I'll see you all on the next one.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Yeah.